this is the bit, isn't it? That confuses me. It's like, did we choose to come here to get this sorted out, or is this just seems a little unfair, doesn't it? That you know, we seem to be here, and there's this parasite messing up our experience.
And you know, I know in my own life, the times that I've made major changes, it was like it became more painful not to change than to change. That was when I made big changes.
You know, it's this whole ridiculous narrative of it's an unsafe world. There's not enough for you. It's scary. Everyone's out to get you, and clearly the old civilization was completely the opposite to that. It was all about empowerment, like literally.
Cosmic resonance, I think they called that one, or
cosmic resonance. That's a better name.
Real science, you can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding. Put that into the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. It's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
The movies are the truth and the news is the lies. They've completely flipped it.
You know, when you look at everything with new eyes and you come across information like she was born into a very wealthy family with elite connections, you know, it means something very different now to me than it would have even a few years ago. And it's our free will that they've really also messed with, because we've been lied to and we react based on lies. Just getting their independence and end up in civil wars for 20, 30 years happens a lot.
Because we keep choosing to pick up the gun and use it on ourselves instead of building and uniting and accepting that we are one people, one spirit, one harmony on one plane that together, united, can achieve anything we dream of.
So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because the change is too difficult?
And then give them pieces of information that they will then pursue themselves and look into, and then they'll wake themselves up.
I was going to mention it's the whole red pill, blue pill of the Matrix. I mean, that of the movie. And you can consider that movie as a documentary because they're telling us something about what's happening here. So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because the change is too difficult? Wake up.
Hello. Greetings, everyone, wherever you're tuning in from at whatever time you are watching this. This is Bernie. I am here with Mike from Faraday Research. Big night for him. He just reached 1,000 subscribers. So thank you to all you awesome souls that have been a part of that. And please also hop over to my backup channel, Crypto Alchemist, and give me a subscribe, because I'm now down to 250 because they still have not reinstated my main channel. But I will let you take it away here, Mike, and give us your updates here while I just do a couple things in the background. Good.
Yeah, well, it's been a busy week. I'm doing the crunch now, getting close to Christmas here, so I'm trying to juggle everything and working a lot of overtime and trying to get stuff done on my experiments and all of the stuff I've been working on. Everybody's been subscribing to the channel, so that's awesome. Thanks a lot, everybody, for your support and everything. Greatly appreciated. And I'm doing a lot of stuff. The last few days I haven't done any videos, but I've been doing a lot of work on the bench. I was doing some experiments with the plasma ball and finding out some pretty interesting stuff with the plasma ball. Definitely a technology that I'm going to be looking into further as we get into the new year and stuff like that. So yeah, I'll be doing more stuff with the plasma ball. Also the spark gap generator, I've refined the entire system. I made it a lot smaller Here, I'll just give everybody a quick view of it, what I've done. Just let me switch my camera around here. And all right, so it's a lot smaller. The board's like half the size of what I had before. Very, very simple design now. A lot less wiring, a lot easier to diagnose problems and stuff. And so I've actually added a toggle switch there, like for the house, single throw switch. Got the high voltage module, goes into the main bank. Then it goes through the spark gap, so it goes in this direction here, comes around, goes back, goes into the capacitor circuit, and then from the capacitor circuit goes into my coil. So I can interchange coils at will now. It just takes 2 screws to swap them out. And then I'm going to put the full weight bridge rectifier over here. I was doing a lot of testing with charging capacitors. Found out some very important information. I'll be posting the link for that video on my YouTube channel probably this week. A lot of stuff that Jim Murray has been working on is very, 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 very important. So I'll be posting that video there regarding what he's discovered and what he's been working on. So yeah, this the whole setup now is very clean. Smaller board, I can interchange stuff. I got some new features, got a nice toggle switch here. I'll just fire it up, and I got everything working good. So now I just flip the switch and it's off. So now I can set my parameters on my power supply, dial it in. So if I'm swapping stuff out, I can keep the same voltage, same settings. Now I can just flip the switch and it's on. So a lot easier, a lot cleaner, safer too, and easier for my viewers to see what I'm actually doing and how I'm setting everything up. So I'll try to simplify stuff. That's my motto. Keep it simple. Don't get too complicated. When you get too complicated, then you get over your head and you get lost, right? And I do it too, right? I get too complicated and then I get lost in it. So I have to keep it simple. So this is a very, very simple setup to work with now, which I like, and I can store things away easier. And as you can see, like the whole circuit itself is actually getting smaller and smaller and smaller to a very, very basic setup. So eventually I could put this in a box, a Faraday cage box, and it's a very nice little package, right? So, you get better versions as you go, right? Over time, you refine everything into a better setup. And eventually I might even throw the odd fuse in there every now and then, to make the system a little bit more safe. So yeah, that's what I've been really up to lately, is just trying to get this thing to perform better, more reliable. And yeah, so the video with Jim Murray is a very important video. I'm going to post it this week. It has to do with a problem that a lot of experimenters that work on, say, like pulse motors and pulse generators and all that kind of stuff. What happens is, I'll try to explain it as simple as I can. What happens is, when you have EMF, now a lot of people think voltage is EMF. It's not. That's where a lot of people go wrong. EMF is not voltage. I made the mistake too, because I was getting high voltage EMF spikes. I was thinking that's true voltage. It's not. They're two separate things. EMF stands for Electromotive Force. Okay, this is what Jim Murray talks about. Okay, so the spark gap generator that I have creates the EMF, the electromotive force, or you could call it current. But current needs voltage to work. Voltage does not need current to work. So I could have all the voltage in the world, but no current. but I could have current, I could have 50 amps, but it won't do anything because how Jim Murray explains it, it's called inductive inductance capacitance. So what
And
happens is,
for those
so
that
what,
don't know, Jim Murray is well known as one of the people to recreate a lot of Tesla's experiments.
yeah,
And I logged on here, Mike. I was able to get that link, so we'll be
oh,
able
did
to
you?
play that Jim Murray video at the end for you. Sorry
Mhm.
to interrupt there.
No, it's fine. Yeah, so basically what happens is, okay, you could start off your test and you're generating all this power, just for sake of argument, say 60 volts, right? Okay, what happens is the second you put a load on it, the current is there, but what happens is your voltage drops. So it'll go from 60 volts down to 10 volts, and then the system craps out. It doesn't go anywhere. Why this is because of capacitance inductance. What happens is that EMF is now trapped in the coil. It can't leave because it went from 60 volts down to 10 volts. Okay. And like I said before, voltage can make current move. Current on its own cannot go anywhere. So what happens when you put the load on it, that voltage drops. So what happens is all that power you've generated is now stuck in the coil. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the problem I've encountered with almost every single device I've worked on. Doesn't matter if it's a spark gap generator, pulse motor, whatever, even the end machine, same problem. You gotta have voltage in the coil in order for the current to flow. If you don't have the voltage in the coil, that current will not go anywhere. You could have 50 amps, it'll get trapped in there. In some scenarios, it'll actually start to heat up. So there's a difference between EMF and voltage. They're not the same. EMF is electromotive force. It's the force, it's the push. But you have to have the voltage in the same scenario. If you don't have that voltage, your power isn't going anywhere. It's stuck in the coil. And that's what Jim Murray in the video is going to talk to you about. So yeah, very, very important find. And I've seen the video before, but you know, sometimes like everything is right in front of your nose and you don't realize what you're looking at until finally it dawns on you. And you're like, oh my God, like this is like the answer to my problems. It's like, so I keeping that in mind. So I did a couple of tests. I haven't posted any videos on it yet because I'm still in the experimental stage. So my big deal and what I want to do with this spark gap generator is be able to charge very large capacitors. So I have one that's it can go up to 16 volts at 500 farad. It's a pretty large bank, and it takes a lot of amps to charge up a capacitor bank. Not so much in the voltage, but the amps. So the way I had it set up with the pulse generator right now, what Jim Murray was saying, all the power was stuck in the coil. It wasn't going anywhere because the second I hooked up that load, it dropped the voltage way down and it was stuck inside the coil. That's why I wasn't able to charge it. So I did an experiment today where I basically added a second phase to the operation. So if I hooked up, say, the capacitor bank straight to a power supply and I turned it on, I could charge it up, but it would peak around 5, almost 6 amps to charge it up. So when I hooked it, this circuit, and I changed it with the pulse, with the spark gap generator, instead of peaking out at 6 amps, it was only peaking out at about 2.5 amps. So I'm getting way more EMF going into that capacitor bank. I'm getting a lot more force, a lot more push going through now. And that's very important. So when you want to charge up a cap bank, you know, if you're going to pull 6 amps off your power supply, it's going to kill the battery. You know, you do that time and time again, the battery ain't going to last. So this system, the way I'm going to rehook up the new circuit, it's going to be 2 channels, one for the EMF and the other one for high voltage. So if I keep those two separate, two potentials separated and then join them together, then I got enough voltage inside that coil that's going to allow the current to push through with the EMF. So that's what I've been working on this past week with Jim Murray stuff. I've been watching
That's
the video
awesome,
over.
brother.
Yeah, I've been watching this video over and over and over and over again.
And it's what you got to do sometimes. I even rewatch our videos over and over sometimes just
I do too.
Soak in all of the knowledge, because you just can't pick it up in one go.
No, you can't. You can't. That's why I watch every video like 50 times. And I'm not exaggerating either. You know, it's just like you said, you can't absorb every single thing that you watch once. You know, you have to watch it multiple times. There might be that one little thing he says that you missed in the last time you watched it. And it could be a very critical point that can really, really help what you're doing, right? So yeah, it's been a busy week, and you know, a lot of research and doing a lot of reading, and then I found the video on Jim Murray, so I've been watching that like crazy and trying to do a few little experiments with my setup to see if I can actually charge a fairly large capacitor bank with a lot less amperage. And it seemed to work, you know, because if I hooked it directly up to my power supply, it draw almost 6 amps, right? So, and I put it through my system, did a little wire change, and I got the 6 amps down to 2 amps, 2.5 amps in that range, which is a huge, huge difference in load. You know, amps is what kills a battery, so that's what
absolutely huge.
Yeah,
especially in amps.
Oh god, yeah. You know, you're storing all this EMF inside your coil, and it's not going anywhere. Because the second you put the load on it, that voltage drops down, and then your electromotive force basically gets starved. It needs the voltage. If you got the voltage in the coil, that electromotive force has something to push now. It's got force. It can force that power out. And that's what Jim Murray shows in one of his motor generators. Actually, it's called a transformer generator. So it's got 2 separate coils. They're separated in 2 separate phases. And then what happens is he starts the one that generates the current or the EMF, and then he adds the second bank after that and patches that extra punch into that EMF, and now it's got the force in that. He's lighting up 2 300-watt incandescent light bulbs. So that's quite a bit of power. So yeah, so it's a work in progress. You know, this stuff here takes some people years. Like Jim Murray's been working on this stuff his whole life. He says he's been doing this since he was like 14, and now he's like it's like 70 years old now. So he's been doing this his entire life. And those are the guys you got to watch. Those guys that have a wealth of knowledge. They're lifers, man. Like, they got so much experience with this stuff. You know, you just have to don't say anything. Don't think you know any better, because you don't. These guys have been doing it their whole life. So that's what I do. I sit back and I watch them, and I understand what they're doing.
Absolutely, right?
You know, because
it's cute. It's crucial to look at the older generation, the forefathers to us, the people that were persecuted, prosecuted, and suppressed our entire lives and their entire lives for their perspectives first. And it's like, if it doesn't resonate with you at first, you know, you go on your own journey, but then make sure to rewatch it spontaneously throughout different parts of your life. And like you just said, like before you watched that Jim Murray video, you didn't really pick up on it. You watched it again now, and it's the most relevant possible thing, pointing out what was literally, like you said, hiding right in front of you.
Yeah, it was right in front of me, and I didn't realize that I've been having this problem right from the day when I started on the pulse motors. Exactly that. I had all this power in there, but I couldn't get it out. I'm like, why isn't this, pushing more than it should be? Because, if I was getting a good amount of spikes of power on it, it was just little bursts. You want the floodgates to open, not just little bursts. You know what I mean? The EMF is an electromotive force. It's a push, and you have to keep that voltage going. And he says the only way you can do that is by having basically two channels. One that's going to create the electromotive force or the current, and then you gotta merge it with a high voltage punch. And when you get those two combining together, that will cause all that power that's stored up in that coil. It's almost like it's a capacitance, right? And when you get enough capacitance in there and it can't hold anymore, well, it's got to go, right? It's got to go, and it's going to go out with a lot of force. And that's what you're looking for.
And this isn't the DC pulse system, right?
It doesn't matter.
It's
AC or AC or DC.
With what you were saying, it just brought up the idea of how Edison apparently and just the DC power plants back in the day had those massive discharges and whatnot.
Well, see, the problem with the problem with DC was it can't go distance. Okay, he had to have wires that were like 5 inches in diameter with a huge amount of amperage, and he could only get about a kilometer of distance out of it. So he would have to have a substation every kilometer just to keep the system up and running. When you have an alternating current, you need a wire maybe about that big, maybe about a 1 gauge wire, and you can send 49,600 volts like we do here in Canada up on our high voltage power lines. It's 46,900 volts, but they'll travel several hundred kilometers, right? Because it's alternating. So that's why Tesla was able to win, because he didn't have to have a substation every kilometer, right? And it all boils down to dollars and cents. Who can transmit the furthest the most efficiently, and that's how Tesla won it. So DC will always have its place. Smartphones, all these like consumer electronics that we have, they'll always run on a DC power source. But when you need the mainframe of our power grid will always have to be AC. But things are evolving. He wanted to go wireless, and this is what Tesla was all about. Coming up with this monopolar field that was able to either go through the air or even travel power through the ground. That's how revolutionary this was. And the people just could not they couldn't understand it. It was Tesla was going way beyond everybody else. He was 100 years ahead of his time. But, powers to be got involved, and all the patent wars started and all the money, and then they found the oil in the Middle East. And JP Morgan, he was salivating for all the oil, and the automobile industry was getting moving, and Henry Ford was starting to mass produce cars, and they just went in the route of money. And that's what it all boiled down to. And that's why we're in this big shitstorm that we're in now. You know what I mean? Sorry for that. But that's what it is.
All good, brother. I feel you. And you're absolutely bang on, my friend.
It's like the way I see it is, the world, the way they wanted this world to be, this picture of how they want society to be, it can't sustain itself. It's going to get to the point where all the oil on land will be gone. And to drill oil out of the ocean, the price to drill oil out of the ocean is astronomical in price.
Oh, so it's just insane. And the risk to the environment, like there's always constantly
those guys don't care about that.
Out of the blue accident that happens in that crazy oil spill that just decimates the environment over and over again.
The global
horizon, right? Like what in the Gulf of Mexico there, like we don't even know what's going on with that. I remember
that was a big that whole thing was just
I remember when it happened, reading the Russian the Russian academic or Institute of Science or whatever it was, or geologist, something. It was like their authoritative group for that such research or whatnot, and they're like, literally the only thing they're going to be able to do is put in a nuclear bomb and hopefully fuse the crust back together to shut that off. And that was like their assessment of how bad that was and like the possibilities, and like it's probably still a catastrophe. And you look at Hiroshima, that's still going on, and like all of these waste, destruction of our plane, like of our environment, that's almost irreversible. They were essentially, with the technology you're bringing forward and experimenting with, working with, and I have to commend you that your latest circuit and how you've been focusing on like making it as simple as possible so that it's the easiest for anybody to replicate and do themselves. But once this gets out, it's like none of those facilities that are doomsday potential catastrophes that we are still relying on and forcing upon this plane are completely irrelevant and can be shut down. And
I'm not really against nuclear, but they went the wrong route. They went with nuclear fission.
Exactly.
They went with nuclear fission.
The hot fission is just
if they went with the fusion stuff and pursued that, okay, you don't have nuclear waste from nuclear fusion, where fission, you create all that radioactive mess, like they had in Russia and they had in Japan. They're playing with fire. They really are.
Almost worse. They're playing with nuclear catastrophe and decay, and
if they go the right
annihilation, and they're playing with annihilation.
And what they did with those guys back in the late '80s, early '90s that were working on nuclear fusion. Him, Eugene Matlov, and all those guys. They should have took them seriously and said,
absolute
"Look, okay,
criminal offense by the academia that literally professionally assassinated their careers and destroyed them." And then sure enough, and I highly I'll put a link in the description after, but I also recommend anyone that's interested in this sort of research or topics to check out the Martin Fleischmann Memorial Project YouTube channel. It's run by Bob Green. He's an amazing guy, and one of the few actual academic professors that is in the same mindset and understanding of free energy, limitless energy, and he's also I'm going to be interviewing him soon, both on my channel or on this podcast, as well as with Alien Scientist and on APEC. And he understands John Hutchinson's work very well, and I will also be having John Hutchinson on shortly. I have been in talks with him too.
Oh, good. Good.
He's fought for 30 years to prove that over unity is real, cold fusion is real, plasma is real. It's over unity by nature. Cold electricity, the nanoparticles being superconductors, and so I'll put a link to his channel. But point that I brought that up was Martin Fleischmann, and that he understood that it's real, cold fusion, and Martin Fleischmann actually died from being exposing himself to so much radioactivity, because it actually is real nuclear reactions. And why I haven't taken my own personal electrolysis experiments further is that I'm working in my own home, and it's like I don't need to be giving myself and my poor father cancer in a very, very short period of time. And
you gotta worry about what kind of potentials you're working with, and what kind of
use very low voltages myself. I don't go with anything too high. I usually try to just keep it to a couple of DC powered batteries, and the soft metals of like copper, zinc, iron, gold, silver, and not taking it into the
too far.
heavier metals, because the denser metals, the bigger ones, they're easier to create the nuclear decay and unstable
alpha,
elements
beta,
that then break down further in the beta, alpha, gamma radiation.
Yeah, the gamma is what you got to worry about in the beta waves. Yeah, the beta and alpha waves.
Thank you, Doc. Amazing. Put the Martin Fleischmann Memorial YouTube channel up. You are already paying dividends for just making you my another moderator on my channel. Thank you, Doc. Amazing, amazing.
So yeah, it's like there are alternatives that we should have embraced 20 years ago. You know what I mean? And
right?
They just want to,
or like you said, Tesla over 100 years ago too, right?
Well, I'm talking about the oil. You know,
yes,
they want to stretch it out and stretch it out and stretch it out, and now it's like it's getting to the point where the middle class can't afford this stuff no more. It's getting too expensive. You know what I mean?
It's also like it's what makes petroleum products that we're burning, we're wasting, we're destroying all of the petroleum to make future
plastics.
Petroleum products. Exactly. Plastics, so many different things. And what a lot of people don't realize is that's the main difference from this society and our just products and stuff like that, and technology. The advancement or what we have now compared to 100 or 200 years ago is the plastics, the petroleum products, and utilizing those. And that's one of the biggest advancements and advantages that we have. And by destroying all of that, it's just absolutely insane and idiotic when we have all of these other different energy sources.
And the other technologies, electrolysis, using water as an alternative to run cars. Why didn't they embrace this stuff?
Right?
And there's still a market for
everything
technology,
else, right? And it would just be like, here, this is how we can all build our own cars, vehicles, and homes that provide unlimited power, so we can do unlimited and create and contribute unlimited more potential to the world and humanity. That it's like it wouldn't destroy the economy, it would free the economy, and it would make it that everybody would now have the potential to live like an emperor or king, or high class, as opposed to the dire situation of 85% of the people of the planet that are currently living in poverty. It's just it's insane.
See, like the bankers and all those guys that run, all the business interests that run this planet, they want to make everybody a junkie. Okay, be a junkie for oil, be a junkie for all the power, and control everything, centralized control. If you free the people of this control and let them power themselves, let them give them more independence instead of being a junkie to the government, and that's going to free us, and that's going to propel us forward into the next century and beyond, because the path that we're going on currently right now is going to be catastrophic. Okay, right? I don't know, I got a 9-year-old, and I don't know what she's going to encounter in her lifetime, but it scares me right now on the path that we are presently on. If all us,
so many people say the same thing, including my girlfriend. She's like, I don't want to bring up kids in this sort of potential of a future and dystopian reality. It's nuts.
So, that's why I'm one of these guys that are on YouTube trying to expose technology that could propel us into the future. Kind of carrying on with Tesla, where Tesla, stopped, and we have to carry on what he was doing, and eventually it's gonna hit where the average, this project here that I made, you can literally go to Home Depot, an electronics store, and you can build this.
Exactly.
I mean?
That's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
We will make a couple episodes just specifically on that and the how to do it, and I'll make one live. We'll
yeah, like I've been doing a few live streams so people can see exactly how I'm doing it. If you have a little bit of mechanical knowledge, you can do this. It's not that hard. But if you have somebody that can kind of guide you through it and say, okay, you're going to need this, you'll need this, and this is how it goes together.
It can be very intimidating, right? But it's like, it's actually surprising how easy it really is once you start at it. And it's like, it might not make it fully correctly the first time, but then we're here to help guide you through. And just like that, you'll have a working one. And it's correct. Sorry, the guy it's Stan Meyer. That's correct. Stan Meyer was the one that created the unbelievably efficient.
And know how his system worked.
Electrolysis, hydrogen powered.
Yeah, know how his system worked. I found out. Okay,
Please
what he did was, know how you traditional people do like the bottle, doing the electrolysis in the bottle and pump it out. Okay, how his system was doing it. And when I seen this, I'm like, oh my God, this guy was a genius. What he did was, the fuel injector that goes into the where your car works now.
Yeah.
He re-engineered it. The electrolysis happens right in that
before that. Or exactly. There. And then I've been saying that I envisioned that myself too recently, and it's like I've been saying that, and it's like that's why
he was able to have enough gas.
The freaking
Lazar.
Why Lazar's H2O car doesn't make any sense is that he's made it, the design and what's needed, so complex and like just ridiculous, that to the point that he has apparently his own particle accelerator on his property that he's made and then uses to harvest the material. Which is like, it's so far-fetched, or it's just so much ridiculous extraness, when literally all you have to do is have that current, that spark going into the salt water or the water right before you're going into the piston, the combustion, and then you have your Brown's atomic hydrogen gases and your oxygen together to then explode or combust into it. And
because
you're producing water out the other end.
Yeah, and what type of engines this actually will work very, very well with is diesel.
That's what I've heard.
Yeah, diesel, because what it's doing, it's basically heating up the combustion chamber, and it takes very little HHO gas to actually accomplish this. Okay, so it works very, very close to the diesel engine. If you know how a diesel engine works, they have a glow plug, right? Well, instead of using a glow plug, you do the hydroxy going right into the chamber and actually have that reaction happening in the chamber. So the residual heat from the last explosion causes the next explosion to happen. So you constantly have that heating inside the combustion chamber, and there you go. You don't need a storage medium.
Exactly, right? The danger of the stored hydrogen that could explode these giant tanks. It's like,
and that's
you don't need that. You have it as water. Your storage is just water.
Exactly. And that's why he was murdered.
Yeah.
That's why he was murdered.
I think talking about it might also be why my channel was taken down.
That very well could have been. Yep.
We will see if the stream just suddenly goes dead again.
No,
sorry, Campbell, but
oh my God, could you imagine?
That's a 2 or 3 year plan to be able to turn a vehicle myself into a running model of that. So,
I was even thinking of trying something like that down the road.
Exactly, but our 3-month plan or our next 2-month plan. First, Cassandra was asking if you can put together a supplies list so that our viewers can go out and buy everything to make your circuit.
Okay. I gotta get a website going.
For sure. But first step, let's get the supplies list. And I, as well as Cassandra, and we will also get Campbell on board to do this too. And I'm sure that he will already be more than willing and wanting to. But as soon as you produce that supplies list for us, we will each go out and assemble all of these supplies, and then we will schedule a live workshop for the maybe 2 weeks from now.
I would say probably after Christmas, because I'm going to be quite busy.
Absolutely. The after Christmas special of making the generators ourselves, reproducing
but irregardless, I still have a lot of videos posted, and
exactly. Everybody should be doing their homework and catching up on those first. And then we will be ready to all be a team and do this together.
Exactly.
It'll be a very, very happy Merry Christmas, but even better New Year.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, it's after 1 o'clock here. I've got to get to bed.
Most definitely, brother.
Maybe you can play that video for them, the Jim Murray video.
100%. I have it loaded right now.
Awesome. All right, guys. I'll have to head off here to bed. And
much love, Mike. Sorry.
Thanks, man.
Sorry again that it was so late. I was just got back from BC there.
Yeah, you're out of town.
But congratulations on the 1,000 subscribers, and that is just the first 1,000 of many that will inevitably come. And YouTube,
thanks,
please.
Everybody.
I love you guys. You are a great platform. Please give me back my main channel. Much love, Mike.
All right, guys. Have
Thank
a good
you
night.
For all you
and
do.
We'll do more videos this week. So just stay tuned to my channel and for all the latest updates. All right, guys.
Awesome, brother.
Cheers.
Bye, Mike.
Have a good one.
YouTube. All right. So I will continue answer some questions here. Cassandra, back to the bell ringing. I'm not entirely sure. I'm guessing it might be 4:32 that the bells rang at, but I don't know. I've actually never looked into it. It's an amazing question, as well as one thing I've noticed is the correlation, the same shape that the current physicists give for the shape also the timeline of the Milky Way galaxy or the universe since the Big Bang is actually the exact same shape as the bell, and that same shape, or the common bell, and that same shape is also the same shape as NASA's official quote-unquote warp drive generator. And it's also the shape of the Nazi bell. So whatever the frequency is that does come out of that bell shape is one of universal resonance. And I suspect, and I've yet to actually do the comparisons on the layout and see if this is the case, but that same bell shape is in fact that they claim to be the entire time of the timeline since the supposed Big Bang, and bell shape is the inversion, one-dimensional shape of being like the starting point from like the oh my god, I can't think of the word now, basically the starting point, or the Big Bang, the synchronicity, whatever you want to call it, and then so the absolute micro, and then or the point of entering or exiting the black hole, and or counter space, and then going from that through and twisting out into the overall torus, if that makes sense. But that's some very, very high and not fully finished thesis of mine involving higher dimensional physics and unified theory of geometry and everything and relativity, but I'm not going to get into that. Yes, the 432 is definitely nature's tune. That's why I suspect it. Yes, why have that? This question, Pittsburgh Will, is due to the fact they've moved it out of 383 and also the 432 to 440 due to the fact that they're getting rid of the natural harmonic frequencies of both the Earth and of the solfeggio frequencies that heal and replacing it. And those are actually full spectrum, like full dimensional energy wave. It's kind of like comparing a laser to a light wave sort of thing. It's a full spectrum sound energy. Anywho, I'm getting way off topic. We will do more questions here after the Jim Murray video, but I'm going to play that, and then I will be back. Love you all. Thank you for being here and joining us. And I will put the link for this Jim Murray video in the description afterwards, or probably could do that right now. And yes, I was out of town in British Columbia, packing up and moving my poor grandma. She is not doing well. She is not long for this earth much longer, but her house was sold and we had to pack it all up. I've been in BC for a week and just got back to bring you this podcast. So love you all, and please enjoy Jim Murray. He is one heck of a genius.
Hi, my name's Jim Murray, and this is a lab where I do a lot of my work. I think it's an interesting possibility that this could develop into some very important progress for mankind in general. So as a result of that, I thought it would be a good idea to give a little overview of what I've been doing and what this is all for. I started working in alternative energy projects when I was 19 years old. I'm now 66. And I have spent a lot of time and a great deal of money coming to an understanding about things which most people do not choose to investigate. The result of those investigations is the type
What
of
up, Travis?
that you
How you
see
doing,
all
brother?
around you in this room. I'm going to be going over some of the aspects of those inventions and discoveries as we progress through this presentation. But basically, I think I should open by saying that my intention here is to demonstrate the possibility in the near future of having machinery with efficiencies that are absolutely unheard of. These things can be accomplished without violating any physical law, simply because of the fact that some of the things that have been discovered here indicate that not
Absolutely,
all of the
brother.
losses,
Likewise.
which are the most parasitic in nature, have actually been identified and included in the average engineering approach to the design of motors and generators. So with that, let me bring you over to the earlier section of the work I've done, and we'll progress from there. The machine that you just saw is called the Dynaflux Alternator. I invented that many years ago in northern Michigan when I was working for Bethlehem Steel. And the story behind its evolution is pretty interesting, but we'll forego that to another time. More importantly, I think I'll concentrate on what the device actually does. In order to give you some insights into that, what I'm going to do is give you a really simple but effective demonstration about why electricity costs so much to produce. This is a Samarium cobalt magnet. There's absolutely nothing unusual about it, except for the fact that it's extremely powerful. If I drop this, it falls in the gravitational field just like any other object would. That's the whole purpose of showing you it separately, so you can see how fast it falls. This is a brass pipe. Now, when I drop this into the brass pipe, you might expect the same results, but believe me, it'll be very different. because it's going to take a great deal of time for that thing to transit the pipe. Now, the question is, why does that happen? See how long it takes as opposed to when I drop it in the open? The reason for that is that as this magnet moves through the pipe, its motion and its magnetic field create currents inside the material of this pipe. And those currents in turn produce a magnetic field of their own. And that magnetic field bucks the progress of the magnet, so that instead of accelerating at 32 feet per second, it just falls at a constant velocity. Well, the exact same thing happens in an electrical generator, except that the effects are a lot more expensive. Let me just get an armature for you to look at. This is a standard armature removed from the kind of generator that you might have being turned by a gasoline engine or a little diesel engine, something like that, so for auxiliary power in your home, for instance. You'll notice that there are coils embedded in the material here. And as this rotates through a magnetic field, there's a voltage produced in these windings. That's in concert with Lenz's law. But also, what happens is the minute you close the breaker and take current out of this device, forces appear which attempt to cause this to motor or to twist as a motor in a direction opposite to that which you are attempting to turn it. And so the prime mover, your gasoline motor or whatever it is you're running this with, then has to labor to overcome this back torque or this reverse torque in order to continue this thing turning at a sufficient speed to give you the voltage that you need to keep the current flowing. In very simplified terms, that actually is the reason why it takes so much power to turn a generator, or to put it in more succinct terms, the power in has to equal the power out. There isn't any advantage that you can seek which will increase the overall efficiency or reduce the amount of fuel that you're consuming. But that's only true of this particular geometry. Now I'll demonstrate a different approach. You notice in this piece of equipment that I showed you.
Sorry, I just had to pause that for a second and address a conversation going on in the chats. Mike, I do believe the water one you are referring to is what we were discussing earlier, and that was done by Stanley Meyer. And right at the end, when Mike from Faraday Research was taking off, right before that, we were talking about how, if you want to even just scroll back once this podcast is done, you'll see. But it is our goal to be reproducing this. It's through electrolysis. And then Nicholas, you were, I believe, Nicholas, was it? Yeah, Nicholas Trey. You're talking about the Joel cell. That is another technology. It's based out of Australia, where Stanley Meyer, and who was assassinated by the Dutch. But his actual twin brother is still alive to this day, and there is actually keeping that technology alive to some degree, but at the same time is also probably scared shitless for his life for good reason. But thankfully, the times are changing. We are in a new paradigm, and the truth is coming out. So hopefully he is one day able to fully come public again with his late brother's work and do justice to it. But anywho, it is a personal goal for in the next 3 years to be able to reproduce a degree of that electrolysis powered vehicle where we'll be converting a diesel powered vehicle, because a combustible diesel engine is actually very, very compatible with very simple actual alterations, not a whole lot, but to be able to convert it to run off of this salt water through the electrolysis process, where you're putting just a small spark through the water right before it goes into where the fuel injection is, so that you're not having to carry just a shit ton of expensive to store, expensive to create, to separate and then condense and travel. And then of course they want to sell that hydrogen, which is just ridiculous, because literally all you have to do is have that seawater right before the fuel injection, and then it zaps that water through electrolysis, putting it instantly into the atomic hydrogen, which is also been called Brown's gas, but it's also, so it's the mixture of oxygen, atomic hydrogen, and regular hydrogen gases. And when it's combusted, it actually produces more energy out in its exothermic reaction of combusting, with the byproduct being, once again, just water, not CO2, but actual H2O is what comes out the exhaust pipe from this reaction. So there goes your whole global warming from climate change from CO2 BS out the window, because every single car would just be putting out water. So makes sense. And yes, you would just be storing this water as the fuel, so you could literally stop at any pond or lake, or I guess you'd have to add a little bit of salt then, but or ocean, and you'd fill your tank right back up. So yes, it is a 2 to 3 year plan to be able to reproduce that and have our own running models. And there's actually lots of people out there that do have this, and other different versions. But yes, the Joule cell is completely different. It is runs off of functions of wave interaction. It's more on a plasmatic level, but that said, it's that atomic hydrogen is also in a plasma state. So anywho, Joule cell, very fascinating. We will also get into that, because it is unbelievably amazing work. I've looked into it a lot. I've seen it, and there's definitely something to it, and it, to me, resembles a lot of what I've learned through the Keshe Foundation and Keshe's teaching of plasma field interactions. Anywho, sorry about that. We will get back to Jim Murray and him explaining the reverse torque and how to overcome it, and all the other amazing things that Mike was also getting out of it.
The shape was cylindrical. If you focus on this machine, you'll see that we're making use of a very unusual geometry in the rotor. It's actually an ellipse. It's an ellipse in 3D, but the cross section of that ellipse is still circular or cylindrical, and so it can rotate between two field poles without any difficulty. Now, there's a very specific reason for doing this.
Hey, Neil.
When we create a magnetic field with this winding,
Travis,
the
Harley,
flux
if you're
comes
still
down
watching,
through
where are
here,
you located these days, brother?
attempts to
Good
cross
see ya.
over to
Thanks
the
for
other
joining.
side and return to the magnetic coil, and this is the only path that it
David,
can take
Doc,
to do
Cassandra,
that.
everybody else,
So
Robert,
when this is
Nicholas,
rotating,
Darius,
the net
everyone
result
in here,
is
thank
that
you
the
for joining.
flux in both of these pole pieces is actually oscillating back and forth. And when it oscillates back and forth, it's moving in a direction which is 90 degrees away from the direction that is used in a standard generator to produce a voltage. So it's actually shuffling back and forth horizontally in these pole pieces and creating a voltage in these windings. And then when we close the breaker and attempt to use that current, the result is that for part of the cycle, it's going to be experiencing a resistance to motion. And for the other part of the cycle, it's actually going to be experiencing an assistance to its turning. And as a result of that, we wind up with a totally different concept in generation and very different numbers to describe the efficiency of the system. It's a very long and laborious presentation to go through all of the numbers because it requires a thing called a segregated load analysis, which I think the audience would find very boring. However, you will be directed on this presentation to lectures and other locations on the internet where you can see lectures that I've already produced and interviews where I touch more deeply on these particulars. So if you have an interest in that, be sure to follow through and look at some of the other material that's going to be available to you. I think the best thing to do at this point is to give you a demonstration of how this actually functions, and it'll become self-evident as to how different it is from a standard generator. But before we do that, I think I'll just touch on what the equipment is that you're looking at. This is a DC motor, and it has on the back end of it a tach follower, which allows the motor to be to have a reference, so it can turn at a fixed speed regardless of how the system changes. This is simply a drive belt that comes over here, runs a clutch assembly, and this clutch runs my generator, and the forward clutch runs a standard generator. And the reason for that setup is in case we want to make a comparison between a standard machine and the Dynaflux machine. Then over here, we have the control console that runs all of that equipment. And in this upper chamber here is a what we call a DC drive. And that drive is what regulates the behavior of the motor. It's programmed to start the motor off at a slow pace and accelerate it at an even rate, simply because of the fact that to jerk this thing into the on position with none of this equipment being bolted down, you risk damaging something or breaking belts. So with that, I will start this thing up. And as it's accelerating, I'll tell you a little bit about the instruments that are on this panel. The top meter here is your input voltage. This is your input current, and this is the shaft speed. The two center meters monitor the magnetic field. This is going to be the generator field voltage, generator field current. This is the output voltage, the output current, and the output frequency of the generator. You can see it's already building towards 60 cycles. So when this speed reaches 1800 RPM, then we'll be ready to bring up the magnetic field. There it is now, it's about 1800. So I bring up the magnetic field. And now we're actually generating the voltage. You can see there's 24 volts coming out of that machine. And when I turn this breaker on, the two floodlights over there will assume the electrical load. So those lamps are now being powered directly by the energy that is made available by the rotation of that machine. And if we had run the other machine first, we'd be able to contrast the behavior between a standard generator and this machine, and you'd see that this hardly presents a load of any sort whatsoever to the prime mover. So I don't want to get into too much detail because for two reasons. These lectures can go on indefinitely. There's really a lot to transmit to other people, considering I've been working at this for more than 45 years. So rather than bore you to death, I think it's more interesting to keep the thing somewhat superficial at this point and move from one machine to another and explain the benefits and the progress that the research has enjoyed. So with that, we'll move to another device. Okay, this is a machine that we call the transforming generator. And the reason for that is because this machine actually incorporates two separate technologies in one embodiment. It's both a generator and a transformer. And in order to demonstrate that and then explain why it's useful, I'm going to run this device for you and produce an interesting little experiment here. The main reason I built it was actually to study the difference between EMF and voltage. Now, I know that most people think that they're the same, but they're not. An EMF is called Electromotive Force. That's the force that pushes current. And the current passing through an impedance, which could be a resistor, a capacitor, or inductor, or whatever, actually the pressure of the charge that cannot flow through the impedance simultaneously is what develops the phenomenon that we call voltage. So it's okay to use them interchangeably for certain calculations when you understand what you're doing, like in the application of Kirchhoff's laws for studying mesh and node equations. But there are times when you really have to keep them segregated. And so I built this particular machine to allow me to concentrate on the force aspect of this separately from the voltage aspect. Now, a lot of the results of that are proprietary. I'm not going to go into the details, but I will show you a couple of interesting features, and we'll use that to further the explanation of the machine. First of all, there are two sets of windings in this machine. One set is brought out on this pair of lines, and the other set is brought out on this pair of wires. Now, these two conductors go directly to this 300-watt bulb. The ones from this side do not come directly to this bulb. They go through this little selector switch, this little knife switch that's down here. One side of that knife switch has a copper bar across it, which essentially constitutes a short circuit. The other side will allow the connection to be made to this bulb. It's important to understand that ahead of time so that you can grasp the significance of the demonstration. So with that, I'm going to bring this guy up to speed. I'll be using a RPM meter to set the high end of the RPM so that we don't blow any fuses. Okay, we're at about 2200 RPM, and that's going to be sufficient to demonstrate what I have to show you. So the next thing we're going to do is turn up the field on the generator so that it starts producing a voltage. You'll notice a glow will appear in that lamp over there when we reach a certain setting. There it's starting to glow now. I'm going to take this meter and we're going to do a couple of voltage measurements just so I can make a point. First, I'm going to turn the lamp off. So now there's no load on that particular winding. We have 59.2 volts, almost 60 volts. Now, if I turn this lamp back on, when we get the glow again, now that we have the glow, we take the voltage measurement and you see that we only have 15.7 volts actually appearing across that lamp. 15.6, okay? So most people would say, well, we just had 60 volts there. Where did the other 45 go? It's actually sitting inside the generator across the windings in a phenomenon known as inductive reactants. It's actually consuming that other amount of voltage so that it cannot reach the lamp. Now, normally, in a standard generator, the way they get around that is they have a whole series of windings and they connect them all together. This machine only has 2 windings, and I'm going to be able to put the full production voltage into that lamp just by making a slight change in the circuitry. You notice all the controls are underneath. I'm not going to touch a thing under there. So the setting on the field is going to remain absolutely the same. But I am going to close this little switch, as I mentioned to you before, and we're going to go first to the short circuit, which is a copper bar that's placed across the output of this switch. That's going to cause a current to flow in this winding, which will change the magnetic coupling coefficients between this coil and that coil, and it's going to release the full potential of that coil into the lamp. See that? Now the interesting thing is that this side of the coil to that side appears as a capacitor, and that's the reason it can do that. It actually resonates that winding, which means it gets rid of all of its resistance to the total amount of flow of electricity. But if I put this to this side, you notice now both lamps come on, and that's because this side opens that side of the generator, and this side opens this side of the generator, allowing the total amount of power that's being created to flow into the lamps. Now, there's some very special reasons for investigating this kind of thing, most of which have to do with the way I've designed a lot of the equipment in this room. But I wanted to demonstrate that in particular because it's a very fundamental concept, and it will appear in every single machine that you're going to see throughout the course of this demonstration. So this little mechanism here is referred to as the SERPS unit, which stands for Switched Energy Resonant Power Supply. And basically this makes use of a principle of power reflection that Tesla worked on 120 years ago. And it actually forms the basis of at least part of each of the machines in this room, whether they're totally electromagnetic or whether they have electronic controllers associated with them. So the basics of this, just bear in mind, will be reappearing in most of the other equipment that we show. Here we have 2 Yokogawa watt analyzers. The top one here is dedicated to monitoring this resistor, and the bottom one, which is a much fuller, more complex device, is going to be monitoring the power coming out of this transformer. And basically what this equipment does, there are some special switches on here which switch the circuit configuration at certain ideal moments. And that's all done under the guidance of an embedded processor which resides in this little case here. And it's programmed to make those switches in such a way that we encourage 2 things to happen. On the first portion of the cycle, we're actually going to be taking power from the power source or from the power line. And that's going to come through these switches, and it's going to go through this resistor. The second half of the cycle, the power is literally going to be sent back to where it came from. And it's still going to pass through this resistor a second time. So the resistor will get hot, which is what it's supposed to do. This meter will show you how much wattage is actually being dissipated in the resistor. The total wattage, regardless of whether the current is coming or going, so to speak, in this resistor is going to constitute what we call the absolute power, because it's going to produce a heating effect irregardless of which way the power is moving. But that's not the case with the power coming from the source, because when I draw power from the source, that constitutes positive wattage. And when I return power to the source, that constitutes negative wattage. So this device is actually going to be monitoring the differential power, or the net power, if you prefer. And that's the reason why you're going to see a difference between these two readings, even though the power is going into the same device. Now, a lot of people would conclude that you're creating energy. It's nonsense. You can't create energy, and I wouldn't waste my time trying. But you can manipulate power in such a way as to access its full capability, and that's what all of this equipment does. When you see this thing in operation, you realize that the very first machine I showed you over in the back, the Dynaflux Alternator, is actually doing the same thing, except it's doing it electromechanically. It doesn't have to be electronic, but the principles are the same. So with that, let me go through some preliminaries. This is going to be the voltage reading on the top. The second one is going to be the amperage, and the bottom one is going to be the wattage. Down here, it's going to display volts, amps, and watts, but I have the option of looking at other parameters, and I will do that once we get this device turned on. So with that preliminary information, I'll switch on the processor, and hopefully we'll get some interesting numbers. So now you can see that we are pulling or dissipating in that resistance 28.92 or 91 watts. But the actual reading that the line sees is only 8.77 watts, okay? And that's not because we're creating any power. It's because of the fact that when you return power, you get a different effect, because this is reading the net power consumption, not the absolute power consumption. Now you might say, well, is there any proof of that? Yes, there is. If we switch to VARs, you'll notice that even though we're running a totally resistive load, I have 222 VARs, which is totally reactive power. Okay, and that's the reason that you have a VAR reading. The VAR reading up here would be 0. Now, if we move to power factor, the power factor is only 0.039, which is also indicative of a highly reactive load. Now, you might say, well, where's the reactive part of it? The reactive part of it comes into play because of the fact that when you return power from whence it came, as long as you are doing it in a rhythmic fashion, you're actually creating a VAR. Even though it can be in phase with the voltage, which is the case here, otherwise we wouldn't be looking at watts, you still are creating VARs. And so just to give you an example of where we're at with this from a standpoint of efficiency, if we take 30.31 and we divide that by 8.68, and then we multiply that by 100, we wind up with 349.19%, which is a little bit unusual. And yet it's relatively simple to do. It actually can be done. And the only reason why this particular circuit wouldn't be applicable to general households is because of the fact that that low power factor would be a reason for the power company to penalize you. And they would charge you just as much or more for having a low power factor, irregardless of the fact that it would be saving them money. They don't want it to save you money. So the point here is that by using this type of technology internally, we can secure higher efficiencies on other devices that will allow you to enjoy a reduced utility bill without aggravating, might be a good word, the local power companies. So with that, we will now move over and do a demo that actually shows this feature in operation. So what you see here are some of the latest developments in the Dynaflux department, which all transcend from the original device that I showed you, the Dynaflux Alternator. Now, these machines are motors as opposed to being alternators or generators, and I'm going to demonstrate them for you along with some interesting little behavioral characteristics. But I wanted to start off by showing a rotor that's typical of what's inside these machines. This is an elliptical rotor. As you can see, it's not round. It's an oval or an ellipse. And you might say, well, how can that turn in a machine? Well, very easily. When you have this tilted at 45 degrees with respect to the shaft, it just spins away without any difficulty. The thing that's interesting is it does display that wobbling motion like we saw in the first machine. And so these devices have to be counterweighted in order to suppress the resulting vibration. But other than that, this is what makes them go. Now, this first machine is a DC Dynaflux motor. And the electronics that are running it, both this little computer and the switching electronics that are on this disk here, are far too small to bring that thing up to full power, because this was an experimental circuit that we used to basically establish the ground rules for this type of circuitry. And unfortunately, after we figured out exactly how to build it, we didn't have any money to upgrade it. But we will still demonstrate exactly how it can work and the benefits of using this approach. Now, there's a couple of things that are important to point out. First of all, this is a computer here, which is very similar in the way it functions in concert with these switches to the previous demonstration I showed you on the SERPS machine. This is the motor itself. And this device here is the shaft position indicator, which, as you can see, is wired directly to the computer. And it sends signals to the computer telling the computer where the shaft is in space. And as a result of that, the computer can then make use of certain algorithms and decide when the best moment for switching and reversing the power flow. Now, in this case, since we're not attached to the line with the motor, the power that's going to be reversing its direction is the power that's coming from the feed and going into the coils or coming back out of the coils. And this device here is what monitors that and controls that. So there's two modes of operation here. One would be to just run the motor directly, in which case the recaptured power, which is trying to oscillate back toward the source, is going to be directed into this big lamp. And so it has to be used up with this type of a system, or else you're going to have a problem blowing up your power supply, which we certainly don't want. So initially, when this thing revs up, you will see this lamp come on. Now, what I'm going to do at a certain point is literally turn that lamp off. And when we do, you will actually be able to see the effect of what happens when that power, instead of going to this lamp, is actually sent back to the source. And that will be monitored on these 3 watt meters. This first watt meter is the actual power going into the motor itself. This is the recovered power, which is going to be coming out of that light bulb. And this is the actual power drawn from this power supply. So I'm going to have the cameraman focus on this during the course of this demonstration so that you can see the effect of making this transition from using the recovered power just to light the light, as opposed to sending it back to the source for reuse. So with that, I'll start up the motor. Now, you can see that there's a small leakage voltage already appearing on this voltmeter here. That's simply because of the fact that this variac doesn't go completely off. But this other voltmeter, which is connected across the recovery channel, is showing 0. So what we're going to do is bring this power up to the point where we've got about 30 or 40 volts. And then I'm going to give the motor a little kick because this is not a self-starting machine. And as she starts to turn, you can already see it's recapturing power. The power that's lighting that lamp is already been used to turn the motor. So we'll bring this up to about 100 volts on the recovery side. And then we'll take a look at some of the readings on the watt meter here. Okay, so you'll notice that this watt meter is a little above 150 watts. We're reading the bottom scale. The recovered power is about 95 watts, which is winding up in the lamp. And this wattage is 150 watts being applied to the motor. Okay. Now what we're going to do is deliberately switch off the lamp. And when we switch off the lamp, you'll hear a little noise, which is the DC to DC converter actually taking the power that was going into this lamp, converting it to a different DC potential and sending it back to the power supply. Now, since we're going to be using this power over again, you want to watch what happens to this first meter when we shut off the lamp. Let me know when you're ready. So now the power that we're taking from the wall has dropped down to about 85 watts. There's no recovered power because we're not dissipating it in the lamp. And the power that's going to the motor is actually 5 watts higher, so it's 155 watts. Okay, so we're literally feeding power back to where it came from, which is the reason this dropped down to the lower figure. And we're only taking enough power from the wall to cover the losses that are incurred in operating this equipment. So here again, we can look at an anomalous feature of this device. If we take 150 watts, you don't have to have 155 to make the point. 150 watts divided by 85 watts times 100. That's 176.47% efficiency. Now that's system efficiency. It is not conversion efficiency. The motor itself is well within standard 70 to 75% efficiency area because it was never engineered to perfection. But just imagine if this was perfectly engineered, and all of this circuitry was brought up to snuff so that this could be run at its maximum design criteria. You would actually see even better numbers than we're showing right now. So this is what you can do with applying energy resonance and Dynaflux characteristics to a DC machine. And I'm going to show you some even more interesting effects when we move to an AC version of this. But first I'm going to turn the lamp back on and return the system to its previous mode of operation. Now you see right away we got the wattage returns to the value that we were looking at before. The input and the output are approximately the same, and the wattage that's dissipated in the lamp is registering as before. The equipment that we just showed you in the film is actually a AC version of the Dynaflux principle. The small machine here is the one I'm going to demonstrate next. And the purpose of this demonstration will be to highlight the fact that it is possible to have rotary motion with a three-phase field and produce very, very small amounts of back EMF. Once I've made the illustration evident with this device, I'll then do the same thing with a much larger motor, but I won't be able to grab the shaft on that motor because I'm very attached to my hands. So I'm going to focus primarily on the small motor for the more rudimentary demonstrations. Now, this motor does not have internal balancing, so there will be a limit to how fast I can make it spin and keep it on the table here. But let me bring it up to speed. Right away, you can see the amperage building. It's already pulling 5.77 or so amps. Now, the interesting thing is it'll pull that same amount of amperage whether it's running at high speed, low speed, or no speed. So I'm going to grab the shaft, and as I slow the motor down, you'll be able to see that because there's no back EMF in this motor, or very, very, very little, that when I slow this down, there'll be a very, very small change in the current, even to the point where I can seize the shaft. So now the shaft is seized, and we've got 6 amps flowing. If I let it accelerate, you can see that it's going to be just a couple of tenths of an amp difference. Now it's turning up to full speed, and we only have 5.6 amps. So basically 0.4 amps is the difference that you notice in the current as a result of the small amount of back EMF that's involved in this motor's operation. Now what I'm going to do is transfer the power from this motor to the large motor, and I'll give another series of demonstrations there. But that motor is going to be demonstrating a feature called compound resonance, where I actually cause a beat to appear between the line frequency and the angular frequency of the rotor. And so in order to do all of that, we have to have a capacitor bank, which also changes the power associated with the movement of that shaft. This motor has no capacitors involved, so it's very easy for me to just reach over and stop the shaft. I wouldn't recommend trying it on the large machine. So here we are with the larger Dynaflux machine. This is a 3-phase Dynaflux AC motor. And as you can see, there are different capacitor banks associated with its operation. For this demonstration, I'm going to be using the low power stuff, which constitutes the three gray capacitors that you see in the background. These are for much higher voltage operation, and they're not connected right now. But there are essentially 3 tank circuits used in this machine's design, and those create a resonance phenomenon that interacts with the angular resonance of the machine to produce the net result. Now, as I bring the speed up on this thing, you'll see that the amperage goes up accordingly, just like it did on the small motor. The difference is that if I didn't have those capacitors on there, it would take about 1,500 volts to run this motor with the type of internal reactance that it has. But we're going to be doing it around 100 volts. So that's one thing to bear in mind. And the other thing to bear in mind is that this thing has some really unusual load characteristics. I'm not going to be able to show any of that because we need the pony brake or the dynamometer, and I need a whole host of equipment that's not set up for this. But just to give you a taste of it, this is a synchronous motor, and one of the more unusual aspects of it is that it's self-starting. So in a lot of synchronous machines, you're going to need an auxiliary device to start it with, either a mortiser winding or something of that sort. I can just do this by bringing up the voltage. So that's what we'll do first. This motor is a little on the loud side considering its size, so we're probably going to have to shout a little bit to get some points across, but I think the majority of the information will be self-evident. So with that, I'm going to start the machine up, and you can already see she's pulling about an amp now. There she goes. She's starting to rotate. 1.9 amps. And you notice that as I apply additional voltage, the machine accelerates, which is not typical of a normal synchronous motor. But anyway, when we get up to about 6 amps, you'll be able to hear a difference in the tone of the motor.
Thank you, Dave.
You'll hear
Welcome.
that beat frequency, if I can let you listen to it. And then all of a sudden it'll switch into full resonance, and you'll see the current jump about 2 octaves in the process. There it is, wide open. I certainly wouldn't attempt to grab that shaft under those conditions.
We are all
So it jumps from
autodidactic.
about 6 amps to 18 amps.
Hopefully Campbell joins
and
us.
the voltage is about 100 volts.
This is just Bernie rudely
And if
interrupting
you
the
took those
video.
caps off the line there, it would take about 1,500 volts to run this motor. And now this motor is not yet fully engineered. It's got some problems, but it's very, very worthwhile in terms of its applications and the type of efficiency that it's capable of delivering. Right now, the biggest problem we have besides money is the fact that these laminations are not adequate for the way in which we're using the magnetic circuits. And we're going to have to invent our own solution to squelch the eddy currents that are involved. But I've done a lot of experiments with different materials and different arrangements for the salient pole projections. And I believe that the solution is very doable. It's just a question of the fact that we need a good team to concentrate on this and a financial wherewithal to support them. So this last machine is also a DC motor. It's a very different one from the others I've shown you. It's a reluctance motor with a rotating field, and the field is produced by an external switching device or circuit controller, as we call it. This circuit controller is electromechanical. It's actually motor driven. But ultimately, if we can get the funding, I will replace this by a totally electronic device, which then incorporates the recapture features and all of the normal things that you would have a computer do to optimize a motor. And that will allow us to get unheard of efficiencies out of this device. But in its present state, what I can demonstrate, which is pretty interesting, is the fact that you actually can produce a constant torque over a fairly large speed range. What's going to happen if we go too fast with this thing is that it does get out of sync with the controller, in which case the motor loses its orientation. But anywhere from about 0 RPM up to almost 500 RPM, this thing is very predictable and very linear. Our studies have demonstrated that with the proper electronic controller and the necessary embedded processors, we could probably take this up to 10,000 RPM and still demonstrate the same characteristics. So with that, let me switch on the power and give you a quick demonstration. Now, one of the things you'll notice when I turn on the power is that this rotor will jump to its null position, which is going to be
I believe this video was made in 2006. I could be wrong. Could be 2016.
Always turn in synchronism.
There's just been so many made of good old Jim Murray. But I'm pretty sure it's at least 8 or so years. Ooh, we'll see now. I've never seen that before.
Now,
so
believe it or not, we have full
could be
torque
newer
right now on this motor. I mean,
that's cool.
If we had the equipment hooked up, I could demonstrate that to you with meters. But I just measured it the other day for some folks who were here, and it's 54 inch-pounds of torque. So that's a pretty impressive number. And we're only pulling 2.28 amps on both our power windings. So that's a pretty significant amount of torque.
Mine too, Cassandra. Bless your soul. Bless all of you lovely souls joining us today. Thank you for putting your consciousness where it should be. Self-expansion and awareness.
You'll notice that these two guys turn together in synchronism. And the torque is just as frisky as it was before. I can't stop it. And this shaft here is about 2 inches in diameter. Actually, if we applied a pony brake to the larger diameter of the pulley, you probably could seize it, but it would be it'd still be difficult to do. Well, I'm accelerating it manually. We still have that same frisky torque with no real problems. And if I lower the speed, it stays in sync with the transmitter or the controller. Well, this, out of all the machines that we've showed you today, this is probably the one which is closest to commercialization. What we need right now is enough funding to finish the design of the electronic controller and probably build another prototype as well. But anyway, that's what's on the agenda, and these are the types of things I've invested most of my life in perfecting. The other equipment that you see in this room represent other technologies, which are just as interesting, but they're a little bit more obtuse than what I've showed you so far. And so I'm going to limit my presentation to the electromagnetic stuff for now. I thank you for your time and attention. Don't forget that you can get to the lectures and the interviews that are on the web by going to the links at the bottom of the page. Thank you for your attention.
'Tis the season to sprint, lift, and run about. When your workout's a joy, it's a joy to work out. The Peloton Tread starting at $77 a month.
Peloton Tread.
Or access membership separate.
This podcast does not endorse the Peloton Tread. Freaking, that is subliminal messaging. Peloton being pushed while I was listening to CBC radio, because it was the only thing that my car could pick up while I was traveling through the mountains of southern BC and Alberta through the eastern Kootenays on the Crow's Nest Pass. And it's like they just had to talk about whatever the heck this is, and then whatever the heck that Sex in the City something. I regretted even saying that. That's why I hesitated there to even promote the names of these things. But mostly, yeah, just ridiculous. Anywho, back to what actually matters. Jim Murray, that is one heck of an amazing video. Let's see, I will pull it back up and post the link for you guys as well, again, for that video, and we will see if there was a date for when it was made. And I believe it was one that was shot by the Free Thought Project. There was the advertisement for them at the very end. I believe that was the cameraman who actually produced that one. And I think it was that Free Thought one is fairly old. Jim Murray actually quite awesomely has been collaborating with a couple of other, garage shop geniuses for the last several years now. They do a yearly conference that also Eric Pollard is part of. I think it's actually in Colorado. It might be in Montana or something. And this Aaron something, I'll have to look it up, and I'll put the links in the description later. But they do a lot of interviews together now, and I don't know if Mike's even seen those ones, but that's my homework, to get that ready for the next one, because they have advanced spectacularly when they combined each other's knowledge and research and experiments. And as we do deeper and deeper dives into the literal thousands of different beautiful souls out there that have each spent their lifetimes and our lifetimes making and experimenting, and what was once ridicule can now be happily and gleefully shared with all, to transfer the knowledge and the open mindset to understand that this is all real, and to disbelieve and mock and debunk the actual reality of our own potential is the ignorant mindset of the past, and that it is about unity, and to put down the division and be one with ourselves, be one with each other, be one with the earth, and be one with humanity, and free ourselves with free energy, and be truth to ourselves, to each other, not project and encourage and cage our own realities of creation with this dystopian nightmare that the tell-lie visions try to instill on us. And be free, live free, create free, and together we will build free. And sharing and doing it together is what really matters. And together we are one, and together we will accomplish whatever we set our minds to. So, Cassandra, I look forward to over the coming months and years working with you and seeing your advancements and my own advancements and Mike's, as well as I'm sure Campbell has been discussing quite often his intention and desire to also be making his own free energy powering devices for a camper, so that he'll also be able to tour Australia and do sharing podcasts across the great red plain, and hopefully they find the legendary Crystal City. And as far out and paradigm shifting as that may sound or be, I think Rex might be the first one over at Leak Project to get into one of these crystal cities through the Grand Canyon Pyramid Complex, and his adventures with Jerry Wills and many other of his awesome co-explorers. And they're connecting and working with the Navajo Nation, as well as a few of the other First Nation tribes and the elders throughout that area. So most likely they will have the experience to be brought in. And the amazing work that Campbell, and I hate myself right now because I cannot have a memory block of her name, but the work they've been doing with Tartaria, Australia, and the search for the Crystal City, and they're connecting to the First Nations and the fundraising, and just the ridiculousness of how that they raised so much in such a short period of time, and then a certain quote unquote funding site of non-partisan, non-bias terminated the account and the cause, which just wow, but just shows the real ridiculousness of the ignorance of some parts of the society, and especially the upper society of humanity today, that they could do something like that, of a fundraiser directly for Aboriginal peoples, and that they raised, I've heard something like in the tens of thousands over just 24 hours, and then this something fund me site just terminated the account. Like, wow, why? Ridiculousness. And also been over 2 weeks since YouTube terminated my account during midstream on my channel, where we were multi-channeling to this channel and my backup and a couple others, and still have not even responded to me, yet alone given me any reason for the actual termination of my main channel. And it's been frustrating. It's kind of why despite being in British Columbia, out of town for a full week there with my mom, taking care of my grandma's house there, as she's now in the hospital, hopefully recovers and goes to a care home, but it is more looking like her time on this realm is coming to an end. So I pray for my grandma's transition of her soul and spirit to the next realm. And she is and will always be one hell of an amazing, lovely lady. And it's the closing of a chapter of my family's line of living in Cranbrook, British Columbia, the East Kootenays. But I still have the family ranch with several cousins and uncles in Fort Steele, which is just right outside. And just like, it's crazy how the cycles go and chapters and whatnot. Like out of the blue, while I was in Cranbrook, nonetheless, I find out that my estranged uncle, in that he was married into my aunt on my mom's side, also in Cranbrook, but the father of 3 of my first cousins that were originally lived in Cranbrook, and one of them still does. But love them, bless them, and may Uncle Herb rest in peace. But he passed away just literally 1 week ago, right as we were arriving into Cranbrook, nonetheless. But that said, he was definitely the least favorite of any of my family, and every family has, that one group or person that, anywho, bless his soul, hadn't seen him. He also passed away. My grandma's house, she had lived in for my parents' entire life, mostly her entire life, from when she moved off of the family ranch that we still have. That's 5 generations, actually, the Bauer Ranch in Fort Steele. But it's beautiful, it's amazing, and getting way off topic, getting a little sentimental, but hey, why not? I hijacked autodidactic. We are all being autodidactic right now. I'm not sure where Campbell is. There was Cherokee, Blackfoot, Manitoba, Jacob Law. Absolutely. While we were on our way back to Calgary today, we stopped by my aunts and uncles, my mom's sister, and a different sister than the one whose ex-husband just passed away. But who they're the Mormon group of my family, nonetheless, because, well, every family has, like, anywho, great. They're great people. They were taking care of my grandma. They were in Cardston, Alberta, which is the Mormon capital of Western Canada, I do believe. And they have a giant temple. I think it's actually like the second largest temple besides the main one in Utah. I could be wrong on that, but I actually took some pretty awesome pictures of it on my cell phone. I was just about to transfer them over, try to upload them, share them before the stream is done, but then the video ended before I thought I had time to do so. Losing track here, all over the map, but so have I been. So I'm back in Calgary. I was in the East Kootenays. We were visiting. Grandma's currently in the hospital. She hasn't eaten in a couple days. So yeah, Mom's going back in 2 days to see her and say goodbye. I guess she was unresponsive when she was there today. But while I was there, I did get to see that massive temple. My Mormon part of my family, they are great people. Back to the Bowers, my great-great-grandma, who ranched the ranch that is still in my family under the Bauer name. My last name is Konkin. That's my dad's side of the family, which is Doukhobor, which is Russian. If you've heard of such things, we are Russian settlers. The Doukhobors, it was 120 some years now, I believe, since the burning of the arms. Basically, the Doukhobors refused to fight for the Bolsheviks. They burnt all of the weapons that the Bolsheviks gave them to fight against the Tsar. They refused. My great-great-great-grandfather, I believe, was dragged to death behind a horse by a Bolshevik because he refused. And they were right from the area around Georgia in the Caucasus Mountains, literally in the old maps that say Tartary and the capital Tartary, right there is where my family is from. So the Doukhobors quite possibly are the last remnants of the Tartarians. I'm not sure. Could be. They were peaceful people. Dukabor apparently translates to spirit wrestler. I was sworn to non-violence by my baba, my great-grandma, or my grandma, sorry, babushka. Rest in soul. I actually saw pictures in my grandma's house while we were there going through it, packing it up because it was sold. So, anywho, picture of my great-grandmother on my mom's side sitting and eating together with my great-grandmother on my dad's side. And my mom's side, it's English German settlers for 5 generations in eastern British Columbia, Western Canada, and my dad's side is 4 to 5 generation Dukabor settlers of Western Canada. And yeah, my dad, God bless him, may he continue to have good health, long life. I call him Farmer Fred because in the city where we live, he still has an orchard of Russian pears, apples, cherries, plums, all sorts of things. But not only that, he grafts the trees, so he gets these crazy, like, hardy, different fruits that have very tiny, sour fruit. But then grafts big, nice, juicy ones on top of it, and we got trees, apple trees that literally have 6 colors of flowers on it. Farmer Fred, that's my dad. Bless his soul. Anywho, I'm rambling on. I forget where we were going with everything. Once again, I just posted the link to the video that we just watched of Jim Murray. I guess I can take this banner down. Well, leave the banner on and show one more video quickly, I guess, while I get a couple pictures to end story time. Oh yeah, like I was here we go. Okay, so back to the point that I was actually talking about to begin with. Aaron. So everybody, I will post this link. Aaron Murakami, absolutely great individual. He, for free energy engineering, this lovely human being has been running a YouTube channel, and that conference that is annual in Montana or Colorado, or maybe it's both, I forget, but go over and subscribe to him and you will literally find a library of knowledge and videos. A lot of them are like the full videos are for sale on DVD because they're trying to raise money for all of these independent researchers. But like this videos of Peter Leidman, there's also many, and he's now full-time working with Eric Dollard in his new shop. And the Jim Murray there, he's been has him, and then the other guy, I forget his name, but I will probably find it shortly, and you will find it over at his channel. And there's thousands upon thousands of hours of presentations of different free energy devices, and here is one that I will play a little clip of. Or well, this one's Peter Lindemann, which is an amazing guy, but that's actually getting off topic. So let's go to his main channel, and instead of trying to describe it, you can all see it. So literally, so this is and I have played videos of his before of Eric Dollard and their cosmic generator. This is whose site and videos they are. I probably should have done this beforehand, but here we are. And now all of you lovely souls can also have that channel too. All right, so now that I have shared that, and you guys are all free to explore it on your own afterwards. This is the lovely guy, Paul Paul Babcock. That is who Jim Murray has been collaborating with over the last several years in most of the videos that he's been putting forward. As you can see, look at this library of amazing, all the Eric Dollard updates and videos you could ever dream of. And as well, Jim Murray further down in here, and so many others. And the Paul Babcock, also amazing work. I'm going to, like you said, ridiculous amount of Eric Dollard content, and literally it's what he's been doing for the last 4 or 5 years, if you guys were unaware of this. That is Aaron himself, amazing human being. That Paul, I'm trying to look for one where Paul Babcock and Jim Murray are talking together. Yes, and they even have Jared Morin come to a couple of them too. That's absolutely... Oh, why don't I just play one of their panel discussions? E-Media is Aaron Murakami's company. Actually, I'm just gonna stop it here on the intro. I'm also going to share this one. I don't know if since I'm also on Campbell's channel and have had the recent troubles with my own main one, I don't want to risk a copyright, so I'm going to just post that video here as well, that you guys can check it out after. And while I get the pictures ready, transfer them from my phone, and I will instead, because this is Campbell's channel and you are all here for many reasons, I hope, but to being autodidactic, let's play a little autodidactic for everyone. And I know that I have the rights to this and there won't be any strikes. So once again, if you've seen it before, this one is definitely worth the rewatch. I myself have watched it numerous times. Is that psychotic? But anywho, or egotistical? I don't know. I don't think so. It's Rex, it's Campbell, it's myself. Enjoy.
Everywhere. They're all over the earth. And the story is that they were built by the Italians and French between, I think, about 1550 and 1700. But they're everywhere. They're even in Australia, which wasn't, found until 1788, or so they say. So these are basically, when you look at the shape of them, they're cymatic geometric shapes. They're always these have this geometry to them, and they always have water around them as well in these canals. And of course, water carries current.
And I have to point out that the amount of terraforming to make these is absolutely insane, and especially for the time frame that they claim that they were made.
Somebody leaves a comment in chat the other day that they're still without power in New Orleans. The hurricane was weeks ago. That's pretty bad. California's talking about rolling blackouts. Texas had their own blackouts last year in the winter when it was freezing. And do yourselves a favor. Don't worry about the power companies. Get yourselves a backup power supply. Go to lightbug.com. Look at this. It's so cool. LYTE bug.com. Lightbug.com. Use code LEAK20. You'll get an extra 20% off. It has a solar panel built into it that's adjustable. It has an adjustable handle, 180 degrees. It has several ports in the back for different phones and different electronic devices. It has 3 different light settings. Get yours. I got mine. And as you can see,
all right. I know that Rex gets, paid for these commercials, or probably does. I actually don't know. But that product right there, I actually bought one on my own, not knowing that he has any affiliation to this thing, and it is actually pretty darn awesome. But I don't know if it's that exact thing, but it looks pretty similar. Anywho, they're amazing, I think.
I've used it a lot.
Sorry. Oh, stupid ads. There we go.
All right.
And wow, he
so
changed
Bernie,
that.
all right, this is part 2 of an epic conversation.
Weird.
The first part of the conversation,
before.
we were
Weird.
discussing these megaliths that seem to have a alignment around the world, and that's fascinating because most of them that you were showing me with that website. Now, what's the website again, so we can just do a quick shout out for that?
FaramFoundation.com. Farham.
Okay, and then just great info, like the GPS coordinates and all that, and the research and these. So look like some of those areas that you had showed of megalithic civilization were underwater also, and I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, like the Yanaguni pyramids off Japan and stuff. It's so fascinating, and I'll send you the link that you can then put in the video for later for people to check out, because it's just next level and nobody knows about it, and it changes your whole perception on our world history and who we are when you find out about it.
Absolutely. And we're going to be talking about the Tartarian Empire as well. You've got Didactic.
That is correct. My Australian partner in crime, researching Antiquitech, ancient civilizations, and Tartaria. And Tartaria is very fascinating because it's come out of, I first heard about it about 6 years ago, coming out of information from Russia first, but the more you look into it, was wiped out right around before World War I, but it's on every single ancient map that's 100 years old or older. And the further back in time you go, the more land it takes up. And we were taught that there was nothing in Siberia or any of those areas. And yet on the maps, it's called Tartaria. It's got its own empire flag. And there's crazy amounts of cities that are on all of these maps. And you look at it today with GPS and it looks like bomb blasts. It looks like the exact same test zones of nuclear weapons and stuff like that, that it's like, what actually happened? And there's some sort of massive cover up. And even there's a released CIA document that right from after World War II, right when the CIA was formed, talking about how the Soviet Union was covering up Tartaria and how it was hiding it from its own civilization. But then it's like, okay, well then how come we weren't taught about it either? And how come you guys also covered it up? So and another thing is it's a lot of the flat earth community are those who have been looking into Tartaria, and thus you hit a wall when I don't necessarily subscribe to that belief. Like, I've been skydiving, I've seen curvature, so I don't know, but at the same time, this whole community is who's done the work on the mud flood, on the star forts, and on Tartaria and digging it up. And star forts are another major thing that is not explained at all, and they're called bastion forts by Western academia and stuff, but they're a type of architecture that's literally in every corner of the world, on every continent except Antarctica. There might be some on Antarctica, I don't know, but it's like in Dubai or United Arab Emirates, I believe, either there or Bahrain, somewhere around there, they've got one star fort that they've accurately dated that's 4,000 years old, and it's identical to some that they claim we made only a couple hundred years ago, and they're everywhere. And it's a common architecture that is not properly explained in our modern understanding and in our history. And there's also actually a Great Wall of star forts that spans through all of Ukraine and then through Siberia. That's bigger than the Great Wall of China. And it's like there's one of these forts every 2 kilometers along this several thousand kilometer wall that you can now see through Google Maps and stuff. And there's just no documentation of when that was built, where it came from. And it kind of makes it a little hard to believe that there's something that's clearly thousands of years old, yet they claim that it was a new structure that was made by English and the French and the Dutch only a couple hundred years ago.
I was going to say something because we were looking at that information on the previous podcast we did. And if you want to pull up that website again, just for reference, that'd be great. I'd like to show a couple of those, what looks like cities underneath the water, because he's connecting it with Google Maps, right? So he's connecting point A to point B with Google Maps, correct?
Yes.
Well, that's not flat.
Exactly. That's one of the biggest parts, is that it completely disproves that, and it only works on a globe model.
I love your hat, by the way.
Thank you.
I just noticed that, dude. That is a sweet hat, man.
This is also from Grassroots, California, started and owned in Colorado, and they've got a what do you call it? They're not outlet, but like their main headquarters store in Denver, actually. So if you are ever around there,
that is correct. Live music. I'm replaying the
like 5 hours
interview
away.
part 2 with me and Campbell with Rex. I'm just
excited.
You
to
should
see
probably
these photos
scroll
that he's
from
gonna
the
share with us
beginning.
also.
It's all new content.
Campbell
from there.
is amazing.
I'm just killing a few minutes at the end here while I email
every
over
time
some pictures to
blows
share
my
with you
mind.
all.
And he digs up a lot of like ancient books and stuff like
you
that.
Love the new
and
content. Thanks for joining us.
Another discovery is that there's these French and German science books from the 1600s that talk about atmospheric electricity, and they give you what hertz frequency of electricity range you're going to get from a radio tower, depending how high up you are, and they have it completely mapped out. And these are the 1600s. Yeah, we're told Benjamin Franklin discovered electricity in the 1700s. So there
and
shows
John
again one
on the
massive
other.
lie. Like, it's just lie after lie that we have being uncovered these days.
Halo. Ladies and gentlemen,
who really
don't get
knows?
hypnotized
There's
by
just
Bernie's
so
hat.
many different
What we were talking about
possibilities.
before, folks,
Plasma
is a very strong
catastrophes,
possibility that our ancestors, the
mass
cavemen, you know how you hear the
with
saying, so
mud,
easy a caveman
like
could do it.
liquefaction.
Well, cavemen were supposedly
massive
they could just
flooding.
barely start a fire, right? Yet there's these megaliths that are 1,000-ton blocks that have such precision you can't even put a piece of paper between that block and the next.
Wars,
so I would say the perspective we have on cavemen is way off. They seem to be much more intelligent than most people walking around today.
Something happened, and there has been many resets. That is all
what
I
are you
know.
doing, Bernie?
For sure.
Trying to find the site.
As many perspectives and information to try to
Didactic,
figure out what this crazy plane of reality really is.
As well as Spiral Up. Spiral Up's like a newer one where it's more on like the happy energy, like consciousness, spirituality side of things. And then his autodidactic channels are on Star Forts, Mud Flood, and Tartaria.
These star forts are quite fascinating. There's some in Tennessee also that I got invited to go check out. Most of it's been taken down now, but I'd like to go see what's left.
And another intricate part of it is that any city, like any world city, whether it's like Beijing, Shanghai, or London, or France, or even New York, every city from the 1700s backwards, any of the maps, they're built out as star forts. It's a star, they're star cities. So it's like it was a global civilization, and thus the Tartarian community suspects a Tartarian civilization only a couple hundred years ago. And where did it go, and why are we not taught about it? And it has to do with that it was a water powered energy as well. Like every city had like these channels and canals everywhere. and that there's another good researcher in Buffalo, New York, that looks into it, Dustin. He used to be called Bushwhacking to Tartaria, but has since changed his name a little bit. But I forget what he's called now, but he does a really good job of exploring that area and showing that most likely there were these cities and this society, culture, civilization that was not just like North America was fully civilized or developed before Columbus. It's that the whole world was, and it was a global civilization that for whatever reason has been wiped out and erased and lied about.
So much has been changed. It would be fascinating if we could find a hard drive from the ancients, right, that had all of their history, true history embedded in there. I was told there was something like that under the Bosnian pyramid, but
okay, so I think the golden tablets might actually have that information into them, and definitely the crystal skulls. Like, people talk about their experience with the crystal skulls, how it's telekinetic. I believe that's because they've stored light. Like, we now can store information. Light freezes in crystals. We have that technology now. I believe that those crystal skulls are essentially these hard drives of the ancients that have the knowledge within them. And I would like to look further into that, as well as all of the golden tablets. So under the Bosnian pyramids, there were some, Romania, there were some, and then Chaos Cave, Father Crespi collection in Ecuador. Those ones are well documented. And although they're in all these pre-Greek, Samarian, pre-Babylonian languages, pre-Sanskrit languages, but you can see that they're similar. I believe that there's also could be that hard storage, like our hard drives today, or they're made out of, the solid state ones are made out of gold. And it's like, what's to say that these old golden tablets don't also have that same information? And that would explain why they were so obsessed with melting the gold down before shipping it when they raided these civilizations a few hundred years ago.
Yeah. You ever wonder if they used it for radiation protection or some type of mental telepathy?
Oh, 100%. The fact that the gold, you have a gold solenoid over as a crown, the shape of that's like a energy generator on the top of your crown chakra. I fully believe that some of with the emeralds, the gems in that gold and how they're intricately made, that's got to be like an aura consciousness expander and reader. Like, it doesn't make sense any other way.
I wonder if those crystal caves in Mexico were some type of. No, I don't think.
Gaia's. That's got to be Gaia. That's Mother Earth's spiritual hard drive right there.
That's what I was just going to say. I think it's natural. Absolutely. Well put, man. It's interesting how they closed it off down there. They said it was because it was too hot, but what is it? You know, hopefully they were smart enough to realize that they just shouldn't mess with it.
Exactly.
This is the website here. And geez, all these discoveries, the Nazca Star, the Carnac Stones, the Newport Tower, the Kensington Runestone. I need to bookmark this for sure. This could be a multitude of podcasts. But here's some more geoglyphs and geolithology.
No wonder he didn't join, stupid Gmail. Put it in drafts and didn't send. Sorry. Sorry, Campbell. He will now be joining any moment, I am guessing.
He's like, hurry up, you dipshits. I've been waiting here for 20 minutes. All righty here.
My bad.
Oops. This is kind of cool.
Yeah, so it's that he's been able to take those sort of lines and figure them out at every other site pretty much in the world. And yeah, I'll let you show some here and talk for a sec while I pick up the phone of my lovely girlfriend. Amber says hi.
Okay. Hi, Amber. All right, we'll go to the Bosnian pyramid geoglyphs. Your boyfriend got mad at me earlier. Nah, 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 nah. Hey, there's Campbell, the man, the myth, the legend, Campbell.
Hello.
Hey, man. Apologies for not letting you talk much in the last podcast.
Oh, no worries. No, that was cool.
I was a little heated. So, I've got the mute button next to me. Yeah, I've got the mute button next to me. So if I talk too much, I'm going to hit mute on myself.
No worries. All right, is Bernai there?
He is. He's got a phone call from his girlfriend. So we were just talking about the FAR-M Foundation, and we were looking at some of the megaliths and such. But I'm super excited with what you're about to share with us. You're one of the leading researchers in the Tartarian Empire. And
thank you.
Yeah. So let me give you permission to share screen here. So if you want to share something, you can do so. And looking forward to hear what you have to say.
Cool. All right, let's jump into it. So there's my pick there. So can you see that? Starfort?
Yes, sir.
So yeah, we'll start with Starfort. So I don't know how familiar you are with these wrecks, but these are everywhere. They're all over the earth. And the story is that they were built by the Italians and French between, I think, about 1550 and 1700. But they're everywhere. They're even in Australia, which wasn't, found until 1788 or so they say. So these are basically, when you look at the shape of them, they're cymatic geometric shapes. They're always these have this geometry to them, and they always have water around them as well in these canals. And of course, water carries current. So there's another one. Where?
Yeah.
This one, I'm actually not sure.
It's
actually
Inception Autodidactic. I don't know. So it's live with just me right now. Mike was with us for the first hour, and I'm currently playing a pre-recorded video that I posted the link in for you guys. This is answering Live Music's question of me, Campbell, on Rex's channel. But I will let this continue to play for the next little bit here while I'm just continuing to transfer some pictures of the lovely Kootenai Mountains, which I was staying in where my family ranch is and where we just moved my grandma out of in southeastern British Columbia. And that I was going to share with you guys before I ended this and head over to my lovely partner, girlfriend's house, Amber, who is patiently waiting for me. That's why I have to go soon. But love you all. Please do enjoy.
Usually in Germany or Denmark,
and you'll see some
Holland,
pictures.
Yeah, sort of Northern Europe sort of area is where the best ones are. There's a few good ones in the USA. I think Fort McHenry and a few like that. But they're all the same. And they've always got, this one's been sort of built over in the middle because it's always geometry in the middle as well. And they've normally got a citadel, which is either a square, a pentagram, a hexagon, or an octagon. But they're just all the same kind of thing. But you can see this one is, what's that, octagon. So that, this is a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 sided. Yep, 8 pointed. And you can see this one's even got another 8 pointed star underneath it that's been turned half a turn. Can you see that?
Yeah.
And there we have in the middle the square citadel. This one's actually, I think it's been turned into housing. But so this is just a map to show these have been around for forever, basically. And this is how they're designed, just all on geometry.
And I have to point out that the amount of terraforming to make these is absolutely insane, and especially for the time frame that they claim that they were made. Like, how in God's earth would you move all of that with a couple people and horses? Like, it's impossible, because it's like you're literally moving mountains, literally moving mountains when making these.
It is. And you can see, just the height here, how built up they are. And now when we see them, they're all on mounds. So we know there's a lot more under the ground. And they're full of old, cathedrals. Here's a cathedral with the cross, and red brick buildings, which we see everywhere. Here's another one, 5-pointer. And as you can see, it's 5-point inside. So that they're all based on, if it's a 5-pointer, then it'll be like everything will be sort of 5-pointed and pentagons and things like that. Or if it's 8-sided, it'll be octagons. And they're not all, they have satellites. This is what we call like a satellite star. You can see this is even half a circle. So I'm not sure if that's got to do with magnetics, but they're all basically there's just geometry. This is a citadel. So this is the inside of one of the star forts. And it looks, there's another one. This one that someone's just built their house inside it. So must be pretty good, energy in there for the crops and the animals. There's another one. And I've got, so you can see they're just all.
Right. And like that's insane amount of terraforming between the moats, the amount of land, the leveling that you have to do to be able to have those moats working. Like it's not, there's no explanation or like validity in the story that we are told on the creation of these.
Exactly. Yeah. This is all man-made. Yeah. Canals and things. And you can see this is, 4-pointer, and then they've gone to the 4 with the circles. And we often see these sort of arrows that are pointing in a certain direction. And you can see it's got one up there, another one there, and then a bigger one there. And you can see it's sort of bursting out this way. Like the energy, it sort of looks like it's bursting that way.
And you made a great point at the beginning that it's cymatic frequencies. Like there's literal cymatic frequencies that match the exact patterns to the majority of these bigger ones. So it is energy. They're built in a higher dimensional energy pattern.
Definitely. So, and this one you might recognize.
Pentagon.
Yeah, exactly right.
20th anniversary.
That's the that's the Starfort Citadel.
Zoom in on that.
So them claiming that they built that, it's like chances are it actually existed to some degree, like at least the terraforming around it before they got
or the center.
Yeah, I was looking at that too, right?
Yeah, no, that's interesting. So now here's another very I get mixed emotions about this. I'm just going to say it real quick. Like America, I think if America falls as far as the Constitution and what they uphold, it's going to be really scary for the world. Yet at the same time, I look at some of the wars that America's already been through, and most of them we hadn't, in my opinion, we shouldn't have been there anyway, right? So did they take this area of what was a sacred site of a star fort and build over it with this pentagon? And is it housing a entity?
Yeah,
exactly.
And an energy node too, right? Like it's in those ancient ley line alignments that it's one of those spots.
Yeah, and even if you look at this, when you look at the aerial view of Washington, that's what it looks like. It's got a massive pyramid in there that goes out, and you've got the White House and the monument and things. So yeah, they basically take over these old sacred sites because they're built on energy points, and they, as we know, they invert everything. They change it around to try and change the energy, which is really changing the way that we perceive it. And so that changes the energy that we give to it, and that changes the energy, right? Because we're the creators, of course.
Right. So one thing I have to point out with that's so crucial that like has always baffled my mind, for instance, is Isis. Isis was the most sacred name, like this worshipped holy goddess for tens of thousands of years. And then just like that, the flick of a second, all of humanity now turned that into fear and terrorism, the exact opposite energy and focus point sort of thing, right? So that ties exactly into what you're saying, Campbell.
Exactly. It's the whole thing, cathedrals, used to be for healing from within, and now it's all about, you know, outside worshipping, you know, false statues and all this kind of thing. Their education, they take over all, you know, all the schools and universities. They're all old world buildings, and so they change that into indoctrination instead of, you know, education, you know, what to think instead of how to think. So it's the same story everywhere. It's all inversion. Now I'll just get onto the next file. One tick, I'll stop sharing that screen. A minute. I've got some more pics here. So yeah, this one. So we'll go into frequencies.
Yeah, I love Isis, Queen of Heaven.
Yeah.
You ever
Right,
wonder
like
if
heaven, Queen of Heaven,
Yeah,
to terrorists.
They
Also,
deal with everything.
you know, you were talking about the Freemasons, and at the higher levels, there's a worship of Lucifer, which is Venus, which is connected to Inanna or Ishtar, Eastern Star. So then you have to ask yourselves, the Vatican had a huge influence in the Bible as we know it, as most people know it. And a lot of the terminology that was written in there, like what do they have that they flipped around, right? Was it
Spell casting,
Yep.
spelling,
Okay.
right?
Yeah, spelling. Back in the 1300s, there was a thing called the Great Vowel Shift, where they literally took vowels out of our you know, alphabet. And alphabet, of course, just means A, B, right? Alpha and beta. So they've literally changed the sounds that we make, which is frequency, right? Which is exactly what we're talking about. This is just a random pic of domes, because domes and, you know, ether energy.
And it's an example of Antiquitech. And
Antiquitech, yeah.
looks
So you
like
can see
a
there's
barn
dome
above
with
it.
domes inside. This is like a belfry, they call them now. And our theory is because they used to have bells, now they don't. And of course, bells give frequency, and then they go down, and we have all these. Let me get to the next one. So this is an oscillator, I believe they're called, and this is someone who plays music. He makes different dance music and stuff, and plays it through this machine. And so this is literally looking at a frequency. This is an expression of a certain frequency. And of course, that's exactly what we see in stars. And even to the point, I mean, it's a moving image, but you can see even to the point that it's you know, like the fractal stacking, where they have the same shape stacked on top of itself. And there's another one. And so this is why we're linking star forts with frequency. And we see this a lot, this kind of rounded shape. And so literally what star forts, this looks like the citadels, you know, the octagon or whatever. What they look like is they're built on certain, you know, energy nodal points, shall we say, which give out a natural frequency. And they're just matching the frequency. You know, they're just making the frequency in the 3D physical world, you know, and then which I guess magnifies the frequency up.
Yeah,
and
it's energy harvesting, right? And that in the center of each one is, like, for the ones that are remaining, haven't been torn down, are these grand cathedrals.
Yep.
And it's a cathode and anode. There's a dipole on the, and I don't know if you have the pictures to show in, we'll go into it, on the atmospheric electricity that in these ancient French and German science books, showing the actual, that they were aware of, and they were harvesting these energy potential differences in the top of the tower to the bottom, and that those domes, they're actual resonator domes, they're actual capacitors. Like, this is physics, this is higher dimensional engineering I'm speaking in terms of, that it's made of silver, it's made of copper, it's made of these magnetic electrical materials, and layered in actual ways that is
a design of an actual functioning energy capacitor, and that they're placed and built, the buildings made out of like silica and other energy resonating materials, and that they've now discovered that bricks are also can be turned into batteries, so that these ancient architectures are actually higher dimensional technology energy harvesting buildings. Like it's actually mind-blowing when you get the real science and understanding of what you're looking at.
And you can just see in this one all the different, they're not just domes, they've got all these different workings inside them, and even something that's called a drum.
Yeah, and it's those are radio guides and waveguide generators and stuff. The actual patterns that they are, you can take and map it, and with an identical like computer processor, as well as like these chips and these different capacitors, and it's the exact same material, the exact same designs, and that it's from what you're using in your computer, the microchip. It's just the identical thing built on a macro scale.
Exactly, yeah. And this, of course, is inside a cathedral, and you can see just these shapes, right? These are the shapes that we see. We just saw literally in those, in these types of things, with the rounded edges and that. And so these are all also, I mean, these are newer ones. They're not the old traditional ones. Oh, there you go. And this is also linked to crop circles. And Bernard mentioned before, and there's also video of these white orbs that spin around in fields and then disappear, and they leave behind these crop circles. So is this literally, are those orbs just energy that we're seeing? And this is literally the expression of energy coming up through the earth, and that's what it creates.
Right? There's just so many fascinating possibilities. It truly is mind-boggling.
There's just so many connections, as far as shapes and fractals. I mean, look at these shapes here, right? You see these all over cathedrals.
Exactly.
Right.
I'm pulling up right now, and I invited Michelle Gibson. She was busy, so we'll do another one with Campbell, myself, and Michelle Rex in the future, where we've been doing a joint project, and I pull out the hydrogen wave function actual from the Sapphire project, like real high level cutting edge science, and you're matching identical patterns that are real frequencies that are full cymatic frequencies of the solfeggios and stuff like that, that are then identical to the base formation of hydrogen, the atom that is the structure of everything, and that it's then the exact same thing that is in the windows of these cathedrals that are the waveguide replicator or magnifier, and that the key, the frequency, the cymatic frequency, is the exact same as one of the tones on the organ. So it's that the organ music is the exact same frequency and shape as the hydrogen creation, and that it all ties into one giant, massive replicating technology structure that is way more advanced than we give it credit or even try to understand.
Exactly. So these are musical notes expressed. I believe this is through water, and they've photographed it. But this is literally looking at the musical notes, and of course, same design, same geometry. But these literally look like the windows, right? The stained glass windows we see.
Yeah, and see, that's C2, D2. So those are notes, actual notes that are keys on the organs within those cathedrals that are then the exact same 2D frequency that are the windows. Like, it's the complexity and what that actually means it's mind-bending.
Exactly. And there's even a lady who goes out and she records the silence in cathedrals. And she sits there, she records the silence, and then she does it again, but she plays back her recording of the silence while she's recording the second one. And she does that 7 times, and she ends up with a frequency. Wow. She ends up, recording a frequency, and it's the frequency of the of the cathedral.
That's cool.
Here's a few more. So this is literally frequency, sound, you know, the expression of sound. And also, if you've looked into Dr. Emoto's work, where he freezes ice crystals, very, very similar, but he's putting in thought energy. He's putting in intention rather than sound. But it's all a frequency. It's just a different expression, right? One's sound, one's, you know, energy, whatever you want to call it, one's vibration. Of course, we see, you know, these, you know, massive machines. And of course, you know, those who want to rule us, they go to these buildings first, right, and take them over, because they're like their Freemasonry.
I discovered the 8 immortal kings of Samaria lived a total of 241,200 years. I've discovered through my research that these...
Now, this is Fort Jefferson. This is in the Florida Keys, 200 miles off the coast, and it's the largest red brick building in the United States of America. And as you can see, this is one of those frequencies.
And it's like, how? Like their story of, we built this 200 years ago when there was no infrastructure. It's literally 200 miles off the coast and the largest, like, how did you get the bricks there? How did you build out an island? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, some of the stories, they say it was the boats dumping their, what do they call it, where they carry bricks as weight? I've forgotten now, but I mean, come on. But also this has got it's in the ocean, and it's got like a moat built around it. And the other thing, and because there's lots of these are like this, just like islands or in the water, in the ocean. Now, they tell us it's a fort. Now, if you're trying to attack the United States in boats and you're coming up and you see a fort, what do you think you'd do? I mean, I know what I'd do. I'd just sail around it.
Right? Just not come within firing range?
Exactly. Just far enough so they can't actually hit you. So it doesn't make any sense at all. And this is, you know, this is obviously Indian.
They're the music notes of the earth.
Exactly. Yeah. Resonant
exactly.
Frequencies.
And everything's expressed. This is the same kind of geometry, you know, coming from the Vedic cultures and Indian kind of stuff. Here we go. So these are some of the cathedral windows, the original ones, you know, before, now a lot of them are replaced, you know, and they show the little pictures and stuff, but this is what they were. And this is literally an expression of a frequency. So the organ in this cathedral would be tuned to these frequencies. And it would also be tied into the bells, because of course they all used to have bells. They got taken out in the Second World War pretty much. And it's not the best picture, but you can see up here, you know, all this stuff, which is what we call antiquity, all these little bits coming off it. They're all antennas and things, and ways to draw ethereal energy, you know, free energy.
Yeah, atmospheric energy out of the, and it's that real science. You can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding, and that this is your 3-phase electricity. You put that into as the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit with the vacuum tubes, the glass tubes, like your fluorescent lighting and stuff, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. It's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
And this window here, this is, what's this, Bernie?
A sound wave guide, and they built these in computer chips, like literally silicon
as well. This bit, isn't that?
Yeah, like that's an actual radio guide, antenna, sound wave antenna. That's what it is.
And of course, we've got all the geometry here again. And of course, you know, now we see all this stuff, but this is, you know, this is added, all these statues are added afterwards, as far as we can tell. That, you know, that's the facading, but all of this geometry that's behind it and actually built into the building is part of the structure. And you can, I mean, look at the work that's gone into that. And they tell us it's all just for the, you know, the worship and the glory of God. Well, what's the glory of God, right? What were they worshipping? What, you know, we know, right? Electricity, maybe. So let me just, I'll just stop sharing for a tick and bring up one more file.
Ooh. All right, sorry guys, I'm gonna have to pause it and leave it there. Once again, here's the link to watch the second half of that great 3-part interview between myself, Campbell, and Rex over on Leak Project. Here is the link. It's posted in all the chat rooms. For the life of me, I could not. And there's, for those that have just joined in at the end here or part way, if you start the video over, it is all new content. First hour is Mike giving all of his updates and whatnot. And yeah, but what I was trying to do for the last little bit was email myself pictures to share with you guys, but I wasn't having much luck with that. So instead, I realized, hey, I can just share it off of my phone. First off, this is the Mormon temple. Oh, can you? I can almost get a decent resolution of it, but this is in Cardston, Alberta. It is the Mormon capital of Western Canada at the least, but I think this temple supposedly is the second largest, only behind Salt Lake City. And sadly, this is not doing it justice. But this one definitely was built in modern times, but it's not the same. It's still pretty spectacular, but that said, it's not megalithic, and it is right. I didn't get up close to see the actual how it was lit and whatnot. This was the view from the and I'm fairly far away. I'm on the other side of Cardston here at the hospital where my grandma currently is, and we'll probably transition to the other side here in the coming days, and may it be a peaceful, restful transition. Grandma Green, God bless. Anywho, that's the first picture. I'm gonna, for the next stream, I will make sure that I actually have them lined up and added in here. This is another one on the way to Cardston along the Crow's Nest Pass in southern Alberta. For those that have heard of Alberta on the horrible oil sands and how we're all oil-based, there's literally just row upon row upon row of these massive, giant wind generators. It's actually pretty awe-inspiring. This picture does not do it justice. The camera is actually on 4x zoom, I believe, the phone camera, and then it's like very, very tall. I think there's 6 or 8 stories tall at least. Just nuts, each one of those. And then there's another one when we're first coming up to them on the Crow's Nest Pass. Oh, can you see it? No, not showing you. Oh, there we go. There you go. You can actually see on the hillside there. Coming up, and literally it's just, there's hundreds of rows of these windmills, power turbines. The plasma ball. It's actually, it was a gift to me. It's actually a Heineken bottle in it, and this was actually made officially. It was an official promotion product of Heineken over in Europe, I believe in Poland. It was given to me from my Polish friend who is now residing back in Poland, but he had brought it over to Canada with him, and actually requires a conversion plug for it even to work. All right. And then lastly, that was the first three pictures, other three pictures, four pictures. So this is my neck of the family native woods of by native I mean we're 5 generation, both dad and mom side, in the East Kootenay Mountains. And that mountain there is the beginning. This is just outside of Cranbrook. You go north up this way up to Invermere and Radium, and then the Trans-Canada to Banff and Lake Louise and Banff, Canada. All just amazing places that national parks. Thus, you know, there's things hidden there. Crazy old world. But so this mountain right here, the peaks are covered by clouds, but at the very end of this chain is what is now called Grandma's Mountain, which was my grandma Bauer, or my great grandma Bauer, who ranched and lived in her homestead cabin till the age of 100 before passing. And my great grandma Mima, her mother, there's actually a picture of me with her, my great grandmother, my grandmother, my mother, and my baby self when I was 2 years old. So 5 generations. And yeah, so this is the far East Kootenays. That my mom's side is the German with a bit of English. I think they're actually they've been plagued with bad luck. I've had probably 3/4 of that side of the family has died prematurely in tragedies, unlike my amazing great grandma and great grandma, and bless their souls, and grandma. She's 90, almost 91, but who knows, she might hang in there. Either way, point being, all the men and everything have died at very young ages, tragedies. It's crazy. And they were the Bauer. It's spelled Bower, but they changed it during the Second World War. It was originally Bauer. And for those that know, the Rothschild name came from the Bauers. So the Bauer family is the origins of, I guess, a sect turned into the Rothschild. So that's crazy. And then also there's the Hunts. My great grandma Mima was a Hunt, and they are of the New York English Hunts. Thus, and I've heard that like part of them was like one aunt here was of like her great aunt is like a queen somewhere, or royal somewhere in Europe, that. I don't know. Straight freaking elitist bloodline, which is crazy. And then the other half of in the Kootenays is the Doukhobors, which are the most persecuted and Russian spiritual people, immigrants to Canada. Not a lot of people know that the Doukhobors actually after World War II, and my babushka, God bless, rest her soul, and Jedushka, they were put into the Japanese internment camps after World War II ended, and they freed the Germans and the Japanese. They rounded up all the Canadian Doukhobor Russian settlers that had been in here for like 50 years at least, probably 70 at that point, second generation Canadians. And yeah, they put them into the internment camps for several years because of the Cold War, and not a lot of people know that. So yeah, I am a mix of probably the last of the Tartarian bloodline and the Doukhobors. that Tolstoy actually, I think it was, petitioned the then monarch of England to get the Doukhobors free passage and settlement into anywhere in the Commonwealth, and I believe that's how all of the my peoples of the Doukhobors that are from right at the edge of Tartaria, where the maps in Georgia say the Tartar capital was, were slaughtered and genocided 100, 150, or 150, 200, from 200 to 120 years ago in that area, and then brought over. And apparently, because of the burning of the arms, because we, I have no idea who that is. But yeah, I'm a Konkan and I'm a Doukhobor, and yeah. So that's that mountain chain of the East Kootenays. Sorry, I'm getting lost and rambling and whatnot. Next picture. This is from my great-great-grandma Bauer. This is from her original homestead cabin. It's a pedal powered, pretty badass sewing machine. That was at my grandma's house, and now one of my aunts gets it. Maybe if she doesn't use it, my mom might, because my mom is still sewing, but my mom, her knees are going on her, so she really wouldn't be able to use it. And she's got a powerful sewing machine. She still sews. My mom's 71. Bless her. I just spent a week with her. Lovely, lovely soul. My mom has dedicated her life to working in peace and reconciliation works with both within Canada and Africa. She's been over to Ghana and Sierra Leone several times and is partnered with several amazing Ghanaians and Sierra Leoneans in their organization PASET, which is an actual non-governmental non-profit that is not a corporation, but rather just honest people trying to do good things. So there's another picture of the roads and then the massive snowstorm blizzard that is there. Is it gonna zoom in, focus for you guys? I don't know. Aha, and this right here. So the moon was actually, when this picture was taken, the camera like blurred it and made it look a lot thicker, but it was actually on just a crescent. It would just a little tiniest sliver, but above it is this giant heavenly body, we will say. And it's either Saturn, but it's that, or it is what I have dubbed the Death Star, which has come back yearly around this time and gets brighter each year. And I've been following, I believe, since 2012 and 2014. I documented it through my telescope during the Parade of Planets, where all of the visible planets are in alignment and visible in the sky all at one time, being Saturn, Jupiter, Mars, Venus, and Mercury. And I did take footage I lost in an old phone. I might still have it, be able to recover it, but where I actually had all of them looking through my telescope, seeing that it is each planet, because I have that powerful of an awesome telescope. And then this, what I call Death Star, because it literally looks like a giant burning ball of flame coming towards us. It was getting brighter every year. And if this is it is even bigger this year, because that is the moon and that is this thing. And it's still visible early. It gets, because of the quote unquote daylight
non-savings, non-quote, because it's freaking ridiculous. We're going to save the daylight by making it get dark where I am in Canada right now at literally 4:30 p.m. the sun sets, and it is completely blackout dark by like 5:30 right now. Anywho, that's when this thing comes out, and then it's completely gone by about 9 p.m. Central, or 9 p.m. Mountain Time is where I am. But I will be taking a look at it through my telescope in the coming days to confirm whether this is hopefully Saturn at a close position and not the quote-unquote Death Star that I have dubbed it, which could possibly be Nemesis, aka Nibiru, aka a binary star of our sun. A brown or red dwarf would be what it would be, or possibly the Planet X, but Planet X would more likely be a couple of planets that orbit this thing if the so-called conspiracies are true. Who knows? I will be looking at it soon. On that note, love you all. I have actually been, I personal experience have been documenting a thing coming every year for almost a decade. It will be a full freaking decade now, and I will hopefully be able to put my lens up to the telescope with this badass smartphone, and if it works out on a clear night, share it all with you lovely souls. Love you all one last time. Here is the link to finish the second half. And if you just joined in, scroll back to the beginning. I will be getting a hold of Campbell and be doing a video again with him, hopefully very soon. Good night, good day, good morning, good afternoon. Love you all.
This is the bit, isn't it? That confuses me. It's like, did we choose to come here to get this sorted out, or is this just seems a little unfair, doesn't it? That you know, we seem to be here and there's this parasite messing up our experience.
And you know, I know in my own life, the times that I've made major changes, it was like it became more painful not to change than to change. That was when I made big changes.
You know, it's this whole ridiculous narrative of it's an unsafe world. There's not enough for you. It's scary. Everyone's out to get you, and clearly the old civilization was completely the opposite to that. It was all about empowerment, like literally.
Cosmic resonance, I think they called that one, or
cosmic resonance. That's a better name.
Real science. You can actually produce free electricity, and this is part of what Tesla was doing, is the differential between the top of the spire to the ground actually creates an electrical differential that you then connect to another wire that goes into the ground, your grounding. Put that into the third phase in your circuit, and then you have a bell ringing circuit, and that actually produces plasma electricity out of the air. It's real technology. These things actually function producing electricity. It's crazy.
The movies are the truth and the news is the lies. They've completely flipped it.
You know, when you look at everything with new eyes and you come across information like she was born into a very wealthy family with elite connections, you know, it means something very different now to me than it would have even a few years ago. And it's our free will that they've really also messed with, because we've been lied to and we react based on lies. Just getting their independence and end up in civil wars for 20, 30 years happens a lot.
Because we keep choosing to pick up the gun and use it on ourselves instead of building and uniting and accepting that we are one people, one spirit, one harmony on one plane that together, united, can achieve anything we dream of.
So do you want to, wake up or do you want to just keep going along because the change is too difficult?
And then give them pieces of information that they will then pursue themselves and look into, and then they'll wake themselves up.
I was going to mention it's the whole red pill, blue pill of the Matrix. I mean, that of the movie. And you can consider that movie as a documentary because they're telling us something about what's happening here. So do you want to, wake up, or do you want to just keep going along because the change is too difficult? Wake up.